posting my shaved head training videos, and they're like, you need a new name. It's like Mr. Clean's jacked brother, Mr. Unclean. It's like the man of many names. Cause it's like at that point, training started to like something clicked in my head and everything started like popping off. So I guess it did help.
Aerodynamics.
Yeah.
Did you realize, because this is one of the things I can't stand is when sweat gets in my eyes. It's always been that way. And with a shaved head, that becomes a problem.
Yeah, I didn't realize there was a problem until I did it.
Yes, and that's why. It's time to sit down, keep it real, and cut the bullshit. Welcome to Table Talk. Hey guys, we're back with another episode of Table Talk. Today, my guest is Patrick Maguire, top 10 powerlifting total from 21 to present. And I'm going to ask you how long you've been competing, so we will go into the deep dive of all that. But your best lifts are 10-14 in wraps, 635, 771.6, and a 2342. When I was speaking to you yesterday, I screwed up because my brain sometimes inverts numbers, but it played into your advantage because I was giving you a 1041. Right?
Just put the sexy in dyslexia. It's fine.
Yes, exactly. Where it was funny because after that, I'm driving back. I'm man. I need to look at my notes. But like, how did I screw that up? Right. Cause it's like who squats 1041? It's going to be 1050. Right. And you kind of said something about that. And, so I looked it up and that's just inverted the numbers a little bit. Good thing I didn't do it with the bench. Right. Cause it'd be a 536.
Oh, I was doing that more when I was a teen.
So before we kind of get into the training and your history and the training and all that other kind of stuff, I have some fun questions to kind of put out there. The first one is the penguin thing, right? Because everybody that I've talked to, I said, ask him about the penguins, right? Which meant I also had to go to, let me open this up, GPT, right? Because I don't know shit about penguins, either. So what's the deal with the penguins?
So, you know how when you go on Instagram, you see someone lifting something and their caption is either like, the devil said you can't handle the storm. And I replied, I am the storm. And you see them like benching 315 for reps or something. But then you come across a video of mine and you're like, I can't count how many plates there are on the bar. Is there 7 plates? Is there 8 plates? Let me check the caption. And then it's, Adelie penguins participate in necrophilia. And you're like, that's not helpful. So it's kind of like a joke where it's like people take themselves way too seriously in powerlifting, and they're here to be, they're trying to be hard. They're trying to be like, it's hard work. I'm putting my nose to the grindstone. And I'm just like, I'm just here to have a good time. And the best way that I could find to kind of make fun of that is it's almost like a twofold thing, because back in the day, Dominici had this thing where it was like, it wasn't his "Don't be scared, homie," but it was unless it's on the platform, it doesn't really count. So I kind of adopted that. If it's not on the platform, might as well just be 135. So all my training videos, especially leading up to meets, where you can start to see like you're at 80%, 90%, you can pretty much project someone's next 3 attempts on a platform based on their training videos leading up to a competition. So if there's any sort of competitive advantage to knowing, hey, I guess Andrew House is going to go for a 1014 on the American Pro, or Craig Foster is going to go for like a 1048 at the Ghost Clash 3 based on what their training videos are like. You go to my training videos and it's like, well, penguins participate in prostitution with pebbles. And you're like, well, I guess there's no use in trying to find a Bill Belichick competitive advantage to looking at Patrick's videos, because, he's just going to give me penguin facts. And honestly, I ran out of penguin facts and I was like, you know what? Penguins don't have thumbs. Oswald Cobblepot probably doesn't have a driver's license, the penguin from the Batman. So it's like,
oh, so you're going all over the place with the penguins there.
Yeah. So I ran out of penguin facts and I was like, now I'm someone brought it up at my gym, John Randall. He was like, where'd the penguin facts go? Because I got super serious for a while, because my coach Joe Sullivan was like, you're kind of avoiding a lot of tough subjects in your life, and you need to kind of take a step back in your personal life, because your body can't tell the difference between physical, mental, and emotional stress. So you're avoiding a lot of things, which is causing a lot more stress, and it'd be better for your recoverability if you like, one of the things that I should be doing that I haven't done in a while is go to therapy. therapy. My biggest total increase was, I think it was 2019 to 2020 or around that time. It was between being in the summer of my last year of college, and I was able to sleep 14 hours a day and go into therapy. All of my numbers popped up, and that's probably the best period of my lifting progress, and I really need to get back to that. But I got really serious in my Instagram captions, and I was taking myself way too seriously, and everything. I was like, let's get back to my roots, let's have fun with it again. And now I'm bringing up facts about like the black-footed cat, which is like a 1 pound cat, but it's also known as the deadliest cat on earth because it's got the highest kill percentage on its when it goes out to hunt. And right now it's Quackifax. It's just a marsupial that looks like it's smiling all the time. So, yeah.
You know how to use Chat GPT?
No, AI is going to rule the world.
Well, I know, but I just if you need them, I just pulled up 100 penguin facts. So you can just keep just sticking with the penguins if you want to. But there's a few takeaways there I want to pull away from, kind of going off script, is from what you're saying, for the competitive lifter, the only thing that really counts is on the platform.
Yep.
Which can be seen in a lot of different ways. And I think sometimes people, when they hear that, they get like all butthurt and offended. Like, what do you mean my lifts don't count? And it's like, well, they kind of don't, and it's the whole training process leading into that counts. When you make statements like that, do you get some of that pushback?
I'm not big enough to get some of that pushback yet.
You don't have to have that many followers to still have a couple dipshits that are going to say something stupid. If they have something to say,
I'll meet them on the platform.
That kind of is where that falls. And the second part of that aspect was, you'll keep, and a lot of lifters will use Instagram predominantly at this point. Maybe it's TikTok, but I don't follow it enough to know, is their training log.
Yeah.
Right. And there's a difference between keeping a training log to kind of document what you're doing.
Yeah.
And to where it becomes obsessive. Yeah. To the point where it can become, I choose my words lightly because I can say too serious.
Yeah.
Right. But that too serious is going to depend upon who that individual is and how do they classify what seriousness is. Because some aren't serious enough.
Yeah.
Where others can cross that line, which it kind of sounds like, what that is. Because sometimes I don't think people realize that if you make a post, it takes longer to make the post than people think, even if it's just like a training log post, because you're thinking about what you're going to write, you're thinking about what you're not going to write, and you're kind of reanalyzing the whole thing. And for most lifters, most of that whole thing wasn't really good. Yeah. Right. And you don't want to put all that out because then you look like a victim, you know, and all this other crap, but it's the truth. And so it typically ends up is this long dialogue, which really nobody cares about except a few people.
Yeah.
And where what it really should be from the selfish standpoint is you should be able to go back and look at that.
Yeah.
Say, okay, I'm 5 weeks out. This is when I was 5 weeks out.
Yeah.
Which that alone is hard to do.
Yeah.
Because you got to figure out, you got to scroll and find it. And then you can compare, and have it in there. But I don't see that very frequently.
Yeah.
You see the good days that are overblown, the bad days, which are excuse oriented.
Yeah.
And kind of goes from that. But I can see how you can get stuck in that rabbit hole. But the penguins help. Cereal helps. Like, I didn't know that Fruity Pebbles was cat food, right?
No, it's Lucky Charms.
Yeah, Lucky Charms. Yeah, the marshmallows. Yes.
Chocolate cereal's the worst too.
With chocolate
cereal. It's like they basically put some chocolate powder on cardboard and said, if we make the milk taste like chocolate milk, you'll eat anything out of it.
Yes. And that's the marshmallow theory as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I did see that one. So these are the fun things that I have here right from the jump of the whole thing. The some of the other ones I have are, I may not have the time right, but I think it was 9 days ago. Is that about when you shaved your head? Or was it 9 weeks ago? It was one of the
it was just before August. It was at the end of July.
Yeah. So it obviously it was a joke, right? That you shaved your head to become stronger, right? But I'm just going to lean into it like it was serious, like most people on YouTube and Instagram would do. Like you shaved your head to be able to become stronger. And so the first question is, did it help? Did it make you stronger?
The funny thing is it did. I've got a group chat with all the guys in the 2300 podcast. That's Shane Haller, Craig Foster, Justin Zotto, and Freg Arias. And I started posting my shaved head training videos, and they're like, "You need a new name." It's like Mr. Clean's jacked brother, Mr. Unclean. It's like the man of many names, because it's like at that point, training started to like something clicked in my head, and everything started like popping off. So I guess it did help.
Aerodynamics.
Yeah.
Did you realize, because this is one of the things I can't stand is when sweat gets in my eyes. It's always been that way. And with a shaved head, that becomes a problem.
Yeah, I didn't realize there was a problem until I did it.
Yes, and that's why I'll throw a hood up when it's really fucking hot, or find something that's there. It's all stupid, you know, if it's a hat or whatever it's going to be. I'm trying to find the least stupid thing that I can do to keep that sweat, especially on the top lifts, because that's where it seems to happen. Yeah, like you unrack a squat, you're getting ready, and then all of a sudden, boom. Fuck. Yeah. You know, for some reason, that's the one thing I can't tune out, is that. And then it's meanwhile the whole rest of your body is just a fucking mess of sweat anyhow. But it's that one thing. So is that why you're growing it back?
No, I'm just being lazy about it. I'm gonna shave my head once a month.
Yes.
So just recalibrate the bald headedness.
Well, if you let it go too long, and this I know from experience, it's a pain in the ass to shave it again. You know, it's. That's the shaved head. Are you new to this whole shaved head thing?
Yeah. That's the first time I ever did it.
Yeah. Okay. So I'll educate you a little bit. And so you're going to have, first off, I had to shave mine because the hair was falling out, and you're in denial of all that and this was pre-social media, and nobody ever took pictures of we didn't take pictures of the meets that we competed in. Somebody would, and they would just end up like on this counter at West Side. And I'm flipping through them, and somebody took a picture where I was getting under the bar, right? And it was just like, oh God, you know, is it time for the wraparound, you know, or do I just shave this whole thing off? And I can, you know what the wraparound is. Yeah. Yeah. So I considered, well, maybe if I did that, it would be more professional looking. But the way I was losing the hair was like dipping into the back of the wraparound. So it would be like a reverse beard, you know, on my head. So then that went through. But the diehards will say, oh, it's not that big of a deal. You just shave it every time you're in the shower. Or I'm very forgetful. So no, it does not happen.
I don't have the shoulder mobility to
well, I don't. I mean, this one's fucked. So I got to do it all with one hand, which leaves a spot like over here that I can't get, right? Which somebody else, this just becomes a huge pain in the ass. Is kind of what I'm saying. Where if you have the discipline, which is so screwed up, because we're going to talk about how discipline plays in training. And I'm sitting here saying I don't have the discipline to shave my head every day, every time I get in the shower, but after a while, when it really does start falling out, then you kind of run into this mess, because it starts growing back in. You're like, man, it's going to come back this time. It's all coming back this time. And then no, it doesn't. So that's my advice there. So obviously it did not make you stronger, where the opposite with Samson would be true, right?
Yep.
Like if you just let it just grow all the way out.
Yeah.
The beard will do that. The beard will do that. So we got that covered with the beard. If you could have an unlimited supply of anything for the rest of your life, what would it be?
Time.
Ooh, that's a good one. That's a good one. When I first saw that one, I was thinking money, because at least with money, I could buy everything except
time.
If you were arrested with no explanation, what would your friends and family assume that you have done?
Kidnapped a penguin.
Doing what?
Kidnapped a penguin. There have been, when I went to the Ghost Clash, one, I was telling some people, I was like, oh, they've got this penguin experience where you can go in and And you can pet penguins, you can feed penguins and stuff. And they're like, do not, under any circumstance, come home with a penguin. They need specific habitats, and we cannot provide that. Don't steal a penguin.
Do they bite? I mean, I don't know shit about penguins, even though I looked it up on GPT.
I don't know. They don't really document that much, but they do have like weird teeth things on the inside of their beaks to help them like eat the krill and stuff.
I did read that they drink salt water, which when I first saw that one, I'm like, well, yeah, duh. I mean, when you assume.
Yeah, they got this gland in their eye that helps them filter out the salt water, so it kind of comes out as like tears when they're swimming. Because you can't actually hydrate on salt water. If we drink too much salt water, we get dehydrated.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And that would be true with the penguins as well.
Yeah. Biology.
Like I said, I don't know shit about penguins, so I'm going to the Instagram penguin powerlifting expert. If you could eliminate one thing in your daily routine, what would it be and why?
Oh, I've been trying to do that. I recently lost my job the week of the Ghost Clash 3, and I've really been diving into this question for my own purposes, which is why I want more time, because I'm finding that even though I don't have a job right now and I'm doing like gig work like Uber Eats just until my new job starts up, I'm not finding myself with a lot of free time. Like I'm still working like 50 to 60 hours a week doing Uber Eats or doing audiobook narration. And the thing that I've been trying to get rid of is my social media usage. I have parental locks on my phone, so I can only be on Instagram for 15 minutes a day, Facebook for 15 minutes a day, and recently YouTube for only 15 minutes a day. And that's still 45 minutes every day that I'm basically bleeding out of. I could be writing a book because I've got a powerlifting ebook that I've been writing. I've got one chapter left to rewrite, and I've got a fiction book that's kind of like my excuse to not go to therapy or journal. And like, if I get frustrated, just kill off a character, serial killer stuff. But I've got a lot of like aspirations and things that I want to do. Like at the Ghost Clash 3, I bullied Alex Usler into letting me be on the microphone and call the deadlifts for the high dots females, and Craig Foster and I took over, and we were both shirtless. It was a fantastic time. And as I was going to the lifter after party, which is not an orgy, it was just a dinner at a Dave and Buster's. I was like, I could do this for a living. I could do this, and that's how I started pursuing audiobook narration. So if I just get rid of my addiction to social media and all that, and become less of a consumer and more of a producer, then I'd be better off, and I'd have less stress, because you're always comparing yourselves with other people, with other lifters. You look at social media and you're like, people just exist and they get money. Like you see a lot of if you get down in the rabbit hole, you'll see a lot of attractive females on Instagram, and all the comments are, you just sit around, you want some money, so you show your tits. And that's, I mean, some of them it's like that, but a lot of them, there's, like you said, it takes a lot more to go into a single post. Like it'll take days and days and days, and it takes a skill set in order to produce things on social media, where it's almost like looking at the box from a different angle, making sure that you can really capture the audience. Otherwise they're just going to keep scrolling, because social media has made it so that we have the attention span less than a goldfish. So like, I think the study said that the average American attention span is only about 15 seconds now, thanks to like YouTube Shorts, Instagram Reels, and TikTok. So, and we end up doom scrolling. We're like, oh, 10 seconds here, 10 seconds there. Suddenly we're taking a dump for 5 hours, and there's a missing persons out, and we're just like, oh, I'm not actually missing. I just need a flush.
One thing I found is if I went to make a post, and that was just the intent.
Yep.
Then there was always looking at shit before making the post, just subconsciously, and then making the post, and then, going back and seeing if the post actually spell errors, typos, or whatever it's going to be. And what should have taken 5 minutes per se, ends up being 45 minutes. Yeah. And the strategy that I used was, when I upgraded my phone, I kept my old phone, and we have multiple lines on the account because of kids and stuff like that. But I don't even know if you need multiple lines, because the trade-in on the phones typically sucks.
Yeah.
right? So it's like, okay, screw it. I'll just keep this. And since I am in an Apple ecosystem and have the cloud, the
Yep.
Mac cloud, when you upgrade the phone, it's basically a clone.
Yeah.
Right. So then when it cloned the other phone, I took all the social media off of the phone that I use that has the text and everything else, and then kept it all on the cloned phone that stays in my bag or whatever it is. So now I have this. The parental controls never worked for me because I would just fucking overwrite it with the password and just kind of go. But now I have to physically like, oh shit, I need to go grab that phone and be able to do that. And you wouldn't even need a different line because most of the time you're posting, you could just use the hotspot on the phone that's actually activated. So any dead old phone could become like that social media phone. The only time it's ever really sucked for me is if I travel because I really don't want to carry around two phones. Yeah. Right. So then it's usually Instagram's the only one I really give a shit about. I'll put that on for that time period, take it off. But out of all the strategies that I've tried, and I've tried to make it so the whole screen's just black. Yeah. I've tried everything that everybody else has kind of tried. And every one of them, you find ways to hack through it and be able to go through. This is the only way I haven't been able to hack through it and get it done. And then it also forced me to write the post in Notepad. Right. So then it's just a copy and paste. So I'm not actually writing the post on there, which was because now it's open post, boom, done. Yeah. Right. It's working, go that route where it's a rabbit hole. And what's interesting is we know it and are aware of it and still get caught up in it. Yep. Right. So the majority of the people aren't even really aware. Oh, yeah. They're just doing it. There's been times with my youngest who, what is he now, like 20? But when he was younger, so 4 years younger, just be laying on the couch, scrolling through Snapchat or whatever the fuck he is, TikTok. And I'm just watching, right? Because I'm intrigued, because it's like boom, 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 boom. Then after watching this for like 45 minutes, it's so fast. I'm like, how do you know which ones, like, why are you liking the ones that you're liking? Because I don't see any change. Boobs. You know what I'm saying? Well, I'm not seeing any change. Like, I'm not seeing like a stop. It's just like, the fuck is this, right? Because in my brain, I'm like, if I can figure out what that is, then shouldn't we be able to get more likes? Yeah. To be able to help the algorithm or whatever it's going to be. And he didn't fucking know. Like, I just like that one. I'm like, oh, okay. Made no difference whatsoever. Didn't help at all. The last odd question I have is if you could be transformed into a kitchen appliance, which one would it be and why?
That's a tough one. I don't use a lot of kitchen appliances. Probably like I'm stumped on this one.
I had a hard time too, right? I had a real hard time too.
Because I'm thinking, because I was using a rice cooker every day, and then I was finding I was missing a meal every day. So I transitioned to doing stovetop rice for my meals every day, and I pretty much only use a stovetop and an oven. But blenders exist too, and then there's air fryers, which I've never used one, but I feel like it's a fad right now, or almost like the pressure cooker back in the 90s. I don't know.
After thinking about it, I went with a dishwasher because they typically last longer and nobody really uses them that much. Yeah, so being like the introvert that doesn't really want a lot of attention or to be around a lot of people.
Yeah, but they have the rights to vote now. Probably a coffee pot.
Why is that?
Because everyone needs the will to live sometimes, don't they? you need that fix, right?
Yeah,
I'm that fix.
Yeah, that we'll go with that. That works. So now I'm going to jump into, how you got into the sport and your background. You played high school football, right? And there was bowling as well, which was in there. If we go younger than high school, say junior high or elementary school, what sports did you participate in?
Through elementary school, I played ice hockey, soccer, and basketball. And then um, well, when I was in first grade through fifth grade, I lived in Belgium. And so I had a lot of options through the international school system to play a lot of like club sports like ice hockey and soccer and basketball just through the school. And because they had a lot of students, they divvy us up into uh, different teams. But
How did they select those options? Was it just random, or was it kind of like old USSR stuff?
not USSR stuff.
Well, I mean, they would push people to where they felt they were the most genetically inclined to succeed at.
I don't think they could have gotten away with that. The school I went to when I was in Belgium was the international school of Brussels. So like we'd have like Nigerian princes and like ExxonMobil moguls. One of my buddies, one of my brother's friends, actually, I looked him up on Facebook, and I'm like, oh, he led a coup in Angola. Cool. So I don't know if they. It was a very. My dad was a government contractor, and we would move all around, and so we got into the school system on I don't know the specifics, but it was a very rich school. And then when we moved back stateside to New Hampshire, I went back into public schools, and I kind of dropped out of the soccer and the basketball, and I really focused on ice hockey. But ice hockey's it's a team sport that's very individual focused. So you get a lot of big egos in ice hockey, and it's like it's like you get one really good player on a team, and the coach is like, this is my golden goose, let's just make sure this guy gets the puck so that we can win. It doesn't matter who else is on the ice, let's just get them the puck. And I was like, like my when I finally got into high school hockey, I was my center, and I think I was either right or left wing. It's been too long, but they were both first team All State, and my role was to just protect them, almost like the Goon from the Goon with was it Sean William Scott?
Slap shot. Is that what the?
Oh, it was the Goon.
Yeah.
And coach would be like, that guy, and I'd be like, all right. I'm like, I'm gonna try and put him over the boards. But my junior year, it's like I was on the starting lineup my freshman year, and as I progressed, I kind of got pushed back and back further, and I got less playing time. And I've got this like hyperfixation with optimization of time and metrics. And I was like, I'm not really having fun with this anymore. So I was getting ready for college coming up, and my middle brother, who's 3 years older than me, he got a scholarship. And now for a brief word from our sponsor of today's video. Hi, I'm Patrick, and you motherfuckers thought I'd actually get a sponsor for this video? Huh? No. Look at me. Who would do that? So I'm sponsoring my own video, and I'm poor as shit, so I have a Printify store. Yay. Links in the description. That's the word I was looking for. Link for the Printify store in the description. We've got shirts like dots. Shirts like is my control. The tism is chronic, but the total is iconic. And we have a plethora of apparel for women as well. Pay me.
Are you looking to boost recovery, enhance your sex drive, and improve performance in the gym? Do you think your hormones are out of whack and you're tired of getting the runaround from your doctor? You know, things like your hormones are just fine, stop lifting heavy weights, etc., etc., etc. I know what that feels like, as I've been down that road most of my life. This is why we've partnered with Marek Health. Marek Health is a premium telehealth platform that specializes in hormone optimization and preventative medicine, ensuring a better quality of life. Marek Health offers a Table Talk panel tailored for our listeners, featuring comprehensive tests like total and free testosterone, sensitive estradiol, and advanced markers like lipoprotein A and IGF-1. These comprehensive panels of up to 84 carefully selected biomarkers allow you to identify areas of enhancement and maximize your physical, cognitive, and sexual performance. It's much different than the panels you may get from your doctor. Choose between self-service options where you can select lab panels based upon decades of experience, or opt for guided optimization with your own health coach. Start with a detailed breakdown of your labs and receive personalized treatment options, both over the counter and prescription. Visit marekhealth.com/tabletalk and use the code TABLETALK to get 10% off your first order. Marek Health isn't just about better health, it's about empowering you to take control of your well-being. Summer's here and so is the heat. I've spent most of my life training in unconditioned gyms, and I know most of you that are training in garage gyms, private gyms, black iron gyms, know what I'm talking about when I say the heat sucks. It kills your motivation to go to the gym, it kills your performance, but it doesn't have to if you keep your electrolytes up. That's why today's episode is sponsored by Element. Element is a tasty electrolyte drink with everything you need and nothing you don't. This means lots of salt with none of the junk. No sugar, no colors, no artificial ingredients, no gluten, no fillers, no BS. It contains an electrolyte ratio of 1,000 milligrams of sodium, 200 milligrams of potassium, and 60 milligrams of magnesium. Element can help prevent and eliminate headaches, muscle cramps, fatigue, brain fog, sleeplessness, and other common symptoms associated with electrolyte deficiency. Right now, Element is offering a free sample pack with any drink mix purchase. Get yours at drinkelement.com. This deal is only available through the Table Talk link.
To the Rochester Institute of Technology for robotics because he was on the robotics team. So I joined the robotics team, which would have meant that I couldn't do ice hockey. And so I dropped out of that, but I could do bowling. So I joined the bowling team, and I did bowling for my senior year of high school, but I did football for all 4 years of high school. I almost dropped out football after the first practice because I had really bad nutrition, and I was puking on the side of the field, and I was like, I don't want any of this. And my dad was like, if you don't do football, you don't do hockey. And I was like, I really want to do hockey because it was still freshman year and I was still enjoying it. And that, like, as I've grown up, I've noticed a lot of times my dad hasn't let me give up and let up for a lot of things easily. So like the biggest instance is me wanting to quit football because I was puking. I had eggs like 20 minutes before football practice, a lot of cardio and stuff, and I was a fat kid, so I just had a very bad time. And he was like, you can't quit this. If you quit this, it's going to start a whole habit of quitting things. And so I ended up doing football all 4 years, had a great time, still in contact with some of the guys that I played football with. But that really impacted me growing or maturing, I guess is the word, because now when I'm in the gym, it's like I'll have like an 8x3 programmed, and I'm like, I really don't want to do that. So let's just do one set. All right, maybe 2 sets. I'm halfway to halfway, so I guess I'll do 3 and 4 sets. I'm halfway there, so I might as well just do one more set. And then I'm like, I'm over halfway there, so let's just finish off the rest of the 8 sets and I'll be good. So it's like it's giving me this avenue and this mentality where I'm able to kind of trick myself into being more successful because I don't give up on things easily.
Yeah, my parents were the same way, whereas if you start it, you're going to finish it.
Yeah.
You know, which when you're younger, you're just like starting everything, right?
Yeah.
Then it kind of sucks. But as you get a little more mature, you think twice before you're going to start something.
Yeah.
Right. Because then you're processing a little bit more like, well, if I start this and it sucks, you know, how bad do I really want to deal with how long this could suck for?
Yeah.
You know, and it just puts another little bit of a layer. It's establishing values, I suppose.
Yeah.
And the reason why I ask about, you know, early childhood sports and development is when you're dealing with, you know, top strength athletes or any top athlete across the board, there's different periods of time as we grow, you know, as kids, to where certain attributes have more developmental windows,
Yep.
to be optimized. If it's coordination, visual acuity, explosive strength, endurance, so forth. And I probably need to brush up on what those time frames actually are.
Yeah.
But when you go back and look, and once you get to high school, a lot of that's kind of you've already passed a lot of that.
Yeah.
But you get down in there younger, you can start to see a lot of the parallels where it comes into where, ice hockey, football, one of the other ones you said were explosive based sports.
Yeah.
So if you're in the sport long enough, you'll see lifters that can grind weights and lifters that can just explode with weights.
Yeah.
And we try to teach all them, to have the compensatory acceleration, maximum forces. But some people, while it's still important to do that, some people, you're not going to see it displayed as you would with others. Like there's some lifters that will just blast a lift.
Yep.
You're like, oh God, he's got 75 pounds more on. You put 30 more on, boom, they're just smashed, right? And a lot of that I attribute to how that early development was, during that time frame. And with a lot of these qualities, as you get older, they diminish, as well. But which an interesting side topic was one of the debates against, like the dynamic effort method or stuff like that. Like either you have it or you don't. And I can agree or disagree with that. But what I'll look into it, that is, let's say that you do, and you can't enhance it past 20 or whatever age. You might be able to stop it from decreasing. So then it maintains, because if you lose that ability to produce that force output even a little bit, you're kind of screwed, especially if everything else is kind of dialed in with all that. At what point during this entire process did powerlifting come into the picture? Or not powerlifting, at what point did strength training become a higher priority than training for sport?
That's a good question. So I'm the youngest of three, and like taking a step back and kind of like putting us into archetypes. My oldest brother was a strong one. He ended up going to the army and being like the health nut, and he can do like half marathons and marathons like that. But he was really into lifting in high school and college. My other brother is the smart one, and then I was the third one. So I kind of developed with this concept of I have to be better than them. So I ended up graduating high school with a 4.0, got my degree in math, but surpassing my oldest brother, who's the strong one or the healthy one, was really the tough part, because it's not like you can as we go through lifting, we learn that sometimes more isn't always more. So growing and training for like football, I mean, ice hockey, they didn't let me bench more than 100 pounds. And we would have they called it dry land, but it was just going to the gym with a personal trainer. Personal trainer was like, there's no way that you could be benching over 100 pounds. And I was like, I'll fucking show you. But training for football my freshman year, my mentor, who was I played center and the varsity center at the time, we got really close, and he taught me how to snap the ball and everything. And I think it was Friday, my football team in the off season, we would have gym sessions, and our high school gym was pretty bad. It was like one bench, 2 squat racks, and a bunch of dumbbells. So it's not like the high school gyms that you see nowadays, where it's like oxygen training and everything, where they're just really pushing the athletic endeavors of their students. But I think when I was a freshman in high school, I benched 185 for the first time. And so I started training with the football team a little bit more intensely, and I think I hit a 200-pound bench. And at the time, my oldest brother was always going to the gym. Once he turned 16, he got his driver's license. And every summer, pretty much the entire summer, we'd go to the gym. We'd wake up, we'd have breakfast, we'd go to the gym, we'd come home, we'd watch way too much TV, drink too many energy drinks, teenage things, and go to sleep and wake up at 10 the next morning, just rinse and repeat. And that was the summer. It was awesome. Lots of Pokemon and stuff. But that really developed. I guess nostalgia is not the right word, but I get really in tune with habits and personal cycles of daily routines. That's the word I'm looking for. So by the time when I quit ice hockey, I found myself, I had a driver's license. My oldest brother introduced me to this little known guy, Ronnie Coleman. And I was like, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Ronnie Coleman. I want to be better than both of them. So I started doing 2-a-days because I was also playing around with this whole time optimization thing. We spend way too much time sleeping. I'm a dumb teenager at this point. I'm like, is there some way that I can sleep less, get more time out of things? So I looked up polyphasic sleep cycles, and there's a sleep cycle where you can sleep 6 hours a night, take a 20 to 30-minute nap throughout the day, and you've got that much more time. Or you can sleep 4 hours at night and then take 20 to 30-minute naps throughout the day. And the more 20 to 30-minute naps you take throughout the day, the more optimized your day becomes. And a lot of the people who do the ultradian rhythm polyphasic sleep, where they don't do any big sleeps, they don't do like 2 or 4 hours, they just take 25-minute naps. I think it was every 4 hours. I never got down to that point, but I got down to the point where I was sleeping 4 hours at night and taking 2 naps a day. So I would wake up in the morning and go to the gym before school, and I would do a Arnold Schwarzenegger from, I think it was like Muscle and Brawn. Do a Arnold Schwarzenegger training day. I'd go to school, eat all the things, and then I'd go back to the gym right after school, and I'd do a Ronnie Coleman training day. And that went further and further. And then when I graduated high school, I started doing it in summer, and I got to the point where I was feeling a lot of pain in my forearms, whether it was tendonitis from football, or I really noticed it on the preacher curls. And I got to the point where I was able to preacher curl 45s on each side, super strong. And I asked I guess the staff member at the gym that I was going to, I was like, is there any way, because I used to get my wrist wraps for football to kind of protect the wrists, any sort of wrist tendonitis thing. And I was like, is there any way that I can do that for the gym? And he was like, there's this guy who goes to the gym. His name was Brad Parkhurst. He's like, he's a power lifter. He's the only one here in this gym, and he uses wrist wraps. And I'll ask him where he got his. He got them from Inzer. And I'll ask him where he got his from, and I'll send him your way. And it was right after my 18th birthday, and I met him in the locker room, and the staff member was talking to him, and Brad was like, well, does he get pussy? And I was like, I don't think I'm a pussy. He was like, then come bench with us. And that was the first time I hit a 300-pound bench, was the Wednesday after that. And I've been powerlifting ever since. So it's been like a transformative process where I always really enjoyed seeing the bar go heavier and heavier and heavier. Like, I think I have back when I think I was 16 or 17, I set my profile picture to me squatting 405 on a Smith machine in a Taylor Swift t-shirt with a bar pad. And I'm like, can we just scrub this from all of memory? Because no, but it's like, if I hadn't done that, I would have never gotten to the point where someone was like, you're not doing it right. You need to do it better. You need to squat in a regular rack with a bar. Smith machine is not going to be cutting it for you. You need to learn how to actually do the lifts properly, and learn the difference between moving weights and lifting properly. And so it's been a long process. I don't even know if I answered your question.
You did, but how did you go about training? Or because one of the questions that I'm sure that you get, and anybody that's in this sport gets, is, when should I do my first meet? So what was the catalyst for you doing your first meet, and then how did you train for that first meet?
So I started my first powerlifting training session, if you can call it, was in August. And Brad was super involved with RPS, the Revolution Powerlifting Syndicate. I ended up meeting Gene and knowing Gene personally through Brad and helping out at meets. And that November, there's not a lot of powerlifting in New England. I mean, there is now, but back in 2014, I can't really tell you if there was any like meets. There was the RPS Boston Power Challenge, but nothing in New Hampshire. So I think what happened was, I think Shauna Mendelson was having a powerlifting meet, and Brad was like, "Hey, Gene, this federation's doing this. Let's have a meet the same weekend, and let's get as many lifters as possible to kind of be like, no, this is our territory."
Mm-hmm.
And it was only a push-pull meet, and I signed up as a 114 female multiply, and it's still listed in open powerlifting for some reason as my only multiply numbers. But I was raw, and he kind of, Brad was like, "You need to do this meet. We need as many lifters as possible." So he kind of popped my cherry like that, and I didn't.
So what happened to the squad on that meet?
It was,
oh no,
it was
it's a push pull. I'm sorry. Yeah.
We were playing just the tip with powerlifting at that point.
Yeah.
And then a year later, the same meet happened again, and they expanded it. It was a full power meet, and that was my first full power meet. I was always like, "Oh, I'll do a meet soon. I'll do a meet soon." And then when push came to shove, I was like, "I'll do the same meet. It's like right in my backyard. There's no travel involved. I can just stay in my dorm room and then drive out there the day of." So it was a pretty easy meet to get ready for. But the way that I trained for it, the first meet, I was like, "Oh, powerlifting, that means lift heavy all the time, right?" So I would max out my bench, max out my squat, max out my deadlift every time I went to the gym, and then wondered why I impinged my shoulder.
Mm-hmm.
And then I took a week off, and they're like, "There's this thing called a deload, where you basically just go to the gym and bodybuild for a week, and then suddenly you feel better." And I was like, "Wow, this feels like cheating." So there's like a method to the madness, right? And then after that meet, Jamie Mata from Fairhaven Fitness, he'd been coaching the team that we kind of had. It was Granite City Barbell, and he would send a program to Brad, and Brad would kind of disperse it throughout the members of the team. And it was basically a Facebook group of guys who would sometimes train together in Brad's mom's basement. And that was like the first program we ran, but I kind of modified it a little bit for myself because it was RPE based training, and I personally don't like RPE based training. I would if it was an RPE 8, I would use 80%, which is, I mean, you can get away with doing that as a beginner lifter, but as you progress further and further, you can't do 80% for like a 4x4 and not piss blood in the morning. That was, I would train 7 days a week, and it would be squats on Monday, bench on Tuesday, deadlift on Thursday, and deadlift on Wednesday, bench on Thursday. No, I don't remember what it was. I remember I would bench on Wednesday, Friday, and Sunday, and then I would do squat and deadlift on the other days interspersed. And I got to the point where I was at, I think it was 8. I was trying to qualify for the Arnold with that, and I qualified for the Elite Day, but not the Pro Day, where I came in second to Kevin McHugh. And what was it? It was like a 750 squat, 5-something bench, and a deadlift.
605.
Yeah.
So 1885.
Yeah. And I think the qualifying total for the Pro Day at the Arnold was 1910. And so I followed the Jamie's program up until that point. And the weekend after that 1885 meet, it was either the third or fourth iteration of the Gate City Gauntlet, which was the first meet that I ever did. I was like, I'm not going to compete this time. I'm going to help run it. I'm going to spot and load. And Greg Panora had just blown his quad off, and he was like, "I'm still going to bench. I've got to be the centurion for my forces. I got to lead the army." And the meet director was like, "Greg heard that you benched 545 as a teen, and he wants to get to know you a little bit. So we're going to have you handle him at this meet for the first session of the day. He's doing only bench, and he's got like 5 handlers because he's got stitches in his leg right now. But you'll be his go-to guy." And after that meet, he slid in my DMs, as all coaches do, sliding into their athletes' DMs a little differently nowadays. But he was like, "I think you got similar genetics to Milanichev, and I want to help you get there." And at the time I knew that I needed a shift in my programming. And it was like a week before, Gene Rishlak was like, I've gotten to know you over the past couple years. I can coach you too. And I was like, you live in Pennsylvania, and if I need extra help and like need to pop out and needs hands-on help, I don't think that I can really feasibly go out to Pennsylvania and train with you and get those hands-on fixes. So I went with Greg for about 7-ish years. And then I guess I've been with Joe Sullivan for about 2 years, because I started noticing, you see like John Hack, Chad Penson, little guys like Dawson Wyndham. I was going to say Shane Hunt, but he's big now. All these little guys who should not be able to tickling super heavyweight numbers. And I'm like, there's something that they're doing that I'm not doing. So I need to hire one of these guys to tell me what I'm doing differently, but do it as a big guy, because there's definitely something. And it turns out it's cardio and a lot of other things. So I lost track of the question.
Well, so if I'm going through and look at the periodization style, the very first times before you met Greg, would you say that was just basic linear, like long period linear periodization, or was it blocked out a little bit more? Like when I say linear, I would talk Western method, 12 weeks, starting at like, 70% or 60% and working volume, decrease in intensity. Was it that, or was it blocked out a little bit differently? The first, because I'm seeing 3 phases here.
Yeah.
Right. So how would you define, because you know programming now,
Yeah.
right? So it's all linear, it's all blocked, and it's all conjugate. Like, so once you really know all this, everything is it's a hybrid of everything else. But in layman's terms, if you were to just define them in the most basic premise, how would you define those 3 different tiers?
So you're asking how my different coaches have coached me throughout the...
Yeah.
Okay.
So in that first phase, right,
Mhm.
typically people come in that first phase is just that basic linear old school type. What was it, that, or was it something different?
It was 10-20 life.
Okay. So it's 10-20 life. So that was Bryant's.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. So that's more blocked.
Yeah.
Okay. And then that moved into Greg, and was that more conjugate, or was it more blocked?
Fifth set.
Okay. So that's kind of the same block type of aspect, just with AMRAPs and better deloading.
Yeah.
And then now it's pretty much been blocked the whole time.
Yeah.
Okay. So what have been some of the major changes in each one of those phases? So like from phase 1 to phase 2, right? Trying to qualify for the getting up to that 750, then from that 750 to $1,000. Like, what were some of the changes that were applied that had that outcome?
So when Jamie was coaching us, it was less of a one-on-one thing, because we weren't paying him at that point. He was just doing it as a favor, because we help him. We were helping him run the meets that we would have in locally, like New Hampshire, Vermont, and Mass at the time. So he was doing us a favor by sending us a program, which happened to be 10-20 life. And then when I started with Greg, it started off a little more hands-on and a little bit more missionary positioning, where if you've heard him talk about him coming back from the stroke, it was I learned how to squat better by squatting more. I learned how to I relearned how to bench by benching and stuff like that. So the first iteration of his program, before he was like, fuck it, we're doing 5th set, it was it would be like squat with maybe a buck squat, and then pause squat, and then another squat, and then you were done. Or it's like bench, wide grip bench, Spoto press, Larson press, and then you're good. So it was like you're just benching a million sets. And then he was like, we're not retaining clients or lifters, so we're going to do something a little more fun, something that makes a little bit more sense to the average person, where the earliest lifter and the later lifter, the more experienced advanced lifter, is going to be able to progress on the same program. Everyone got the same program because it was only $20 a month through Train Heroic, and he kind of developed this Facebook group where he taught like the OGs what he was looking for, like what cues you should be using, what it looks like when things break down. So while I was with Greg, I basically got 7 years of coaching experience, because I was breaking down the other lifters' videos and being like, hey, this is what's going on. Here's how you need to adjust that. So once he did that, because at one point he ended up having over 200 clients, and as a coach, you can't watch 200 videos of 3 lifts of every single lifter every single day, looking at and remember what each lifter needs to do. Like, I think a lot of the modern coaches have maybe 25 lifters. So having 10 times more than that, you can't do that. So you've got to basically have a team of experienced people knowing what's going on. So a little bit more emphasis and more hands-on, or it wasn't really hands-on at the end.
Personalized.
Personalized. Yeah. And a little bit more cycle-based. And I had a little bit of a different program on there, because I needed to deload more often. Like in the Train Heroic that Greg had, it was every 5th week was a deload, but I needed every 4th week to be a deload. And as I progressed, right before my last meet, my last meet with him was the American Pro 1, and I was training every 3rd day. So my weeks were 9 days long, and I would only train 3 days every 9 days. And I was a lot more rested. I was able to kind of push a little harder, but I'm not sure if I got as much progress as I needed. And I was like, if you look at other lifters who are similar sized and similar totaled to me, like Dan Bell, he'll train 2 days a week, where like every other week he's squatting or he's deadlifting, but he's benching 1 day a week, or at least that's what I've heard. And I was like, there's something that these little guys are doing, because they're able to progress. Like John Hack just got a 2,300 total. I'm like, I'm a little nervous that he's going to pass my total, which should never happen. Should never let someone half my size total more than me. And then there was a meet where everyone was like, who's going to win? Is it going to be Dan Bell or John Hack? And then Chad Penson won. And I was like, so these little guys, they're progressing. But Greg's, I got more cues, and I got to see what I learned what trackable factors were, like fatigue, learning what fatigue ratios were and how fatigue progresses through a block, and listening to my body a little bit better. I know when my body's like, hey, we need to slow down a little bit, take a deload. Otherwise we're going to implode from the inside out. Things are going to start hurting. And I always felt like going into meets, I was always, I don't want to say the healthiest person there, but I was basically the most, not ready is the right term, but least injured going into powerlifting meets, where
joints felt better.
Yeah. Because I had that frequent deload. But it was still a I don't want to say old school kind of method, where we're still looking to move as heavy of weight as fast as possible, and control is kind of there. But if you can row 300 pounds for sets of 12, you're going to row 300 pounds for sets of 12. It doesn't matter if you've got all the body English in the world, you're moving 300 pounds. And it's everyone talks about, you don't want to ego lift. And then they're only talking about squat, bench, and deadlift, where the ego lifters, where they'll load up 17 plates on a squat and they walk it out, and they're looking like a bowl of Jello, just their stabilizers aren't there. They break at the knees and they lock it out, and they're like, yeah, squat PR. Or like they're benching, and I don't even watch gym fail videos anymore. I don't like the bad juju. But like, you'll see the deadlift where they look like a dying cat, and they're like, yeah, I locked it out, but well, all your discs have popped out your back. And it's like that ego lifting. But you never really hear people talk about ego lifting when it comes to doing your accessories. So like, I can leg raise. I can single leg raise the entire stack on whatever leg raise machine we have at the gym, but I don't, because it's not productive for me. I can lat pull down. I have lat pull down the entire stack, plus like, I think it was like 4 30-pound chains that I threw on top of the lat pull down stack at my gym, and the entire machine was bending and bowing, and the gym owner was like, that doesn't look super safe. And I'm like, yeah, but I'm doing it for sets of 20. But it wasn't productive lifting. And recently with my new coach Joe Sullivan and a bit of gentle bullying from Brianni Terry, who's my nutritionist, they've kind of changed the way that I see the accessories because when I was programmed accessories, I get RPE, and RPE, I have a love-hate relationship with RPE because it's a catch-22, but I'll talk about that later. But when I first started with Joe, he wanted to basically audit my accessories as well. He's like, well, are you doing them right? And he was like, you are not straining enough when you are doing your accessories. You're basically sandbagging your accessories. And I was like, all right, time to buckle up. And then the next 4 training sessions, I puked every time. He was like, there we go. We're doing it right now. And as we've gone through, I hit a PR of 300-pound single arm row. I basically had to build a dumbbell out of plates and handles and stuff at my gym. And I sent the video. I was like, isn't this cool? My coach was like, that is the most dog shit lift I have ever seen in my entire life. You need to take a step back and absolutely reassess the way that you are doing everything in the gym. I want you to max out of your single arm row should only be at about 70 pounds, not 300 fucking pounds. That's not productive at all. You're ego lifting. You're not getting anything. You're just taxing your CNS. There's a difference between training your CNS and training your muscles. Your muscles aren't really getting stronger. Your CNS is just getting more acclimated to it. Who cares? You can row 300 pounds. I don't. And he implemented this thing. He wanted me to tempo everything. So it's a 0132, or he gave me a 013 tempo where you basically at the if I think about it, the O is the explosion, basically the contraction of the muscle. Yeah. 1 count hold at the peak contraction, kind of hold that squeeze, and then a slow eccentric, a 3 count eccentric. And I was going through that, and I was like, "There's a piece missing from this," and I don't remember if it was Joe or Bree or someone mentioned that. Or if it was Squat University while I was doom scrolling while taking a dump once, but accessories are stretching under a load. I think it was Dawson Wyndham actually. And I was like, oh, and then I kind of like brainstormed how I'm going to be doing this. And I developed this like 0132 methodology where I've got that 013 tempo, but at the peak stretch, I hold it for a 2 count and then doing that. And then suddenly, like as I continued doing that, I was like, my joints hurt less. Like I have this thing where my chest can get really tight and I've got anxiety and sometimes I'll be like, I have chest pains. Wonderful. Now is the time. But it's actually like my chest is just super tight and super cramped and I benched heavy this week, or like I had my elbow up on while I'm driving and I've got a lot of tightness in my chest. And if you go anywhere and you're like, I have chest tightness, they're like, you're dying. Mm-hmm. And I don't like doing that. But like I implemented the 0132 and I'm like, I don't have tricep pain anymore. I can actually do things overhead. My bench descent, like in the past, my bench descent, people are like, is this slowed down or anything? And I'm like, no, I'm just really slow at the eccentric. And you've got the whole variable of time under tension that develops when you're lifting heavy of once you get to a certain point, you can only withstand the pressures for so many seconds. And like if you take a video of an AMRAP versus a really hard set where you're taking your time with everything, AMRAPs tend to have the little nuance of you're supposed to get as many good reps as possible, but that's just like asking a dude how big his dick is, and he's always going to over exaggerate, and you're going to get more reps than you probably should be getting, but they're going to be ugly as hell. So developing bad habits like that through AMRAPs like that and not being accountable enough towards myself, I developed bad habits. But with the 0132 stretching under a load kind of idea, I kind of got rid of a lot of the aches and pains that I have. Like I had back when I was 19, when I was prepping for the meet where I set the all-time teen raw bench record, every time that I would bench over 500 pounds, I would have to go off in the corner and be in the fetal position because I had such bad bicep tendonitis and my rotator cuff was so inflamed. And I would have to like curl up in a ball and cry myself until I was ready for the next set where all the pain was gone, and take an ibuprofen just to make sure that I didn't hurt. And then now I can bench I did a 2x3 at 500 paused yesterday, and then I went to the zoo, and nothing hurts, and I'm just cool guy Pat right now.
The way I would summarize what you just said is, if you're looking at probably the easiest way to do this, if you're looking at a training day, there might be one or two exercises that are at the very top, after a warm up, that you're training the movement. Mm-hmm. Right. And that movement's going to have correspondence to your main lift. Yep. Or it's normally the main lift or mechanically similar lift or something like that. Then once you move out of that category, then you're moving into, you're not really training movements anymore. You're training muscles. Mm-hmm. Right. So then that's where a lot of the bodybuilding principles should come in, like what you're talking about. Yep. There, because when I would see like the ridiculous one arm row, the same thing, or even pull downs and stuff, like, dude, you're just trying to train your lats here. Yeah. Right. So there's better ways to optimize this. You're going to have to use less weight, right? Which to the lifter at the time, they don't want to. Yeah. Right. But they also don't understand the risk that comes with that. The systemic fatigue that's accumulated. Oh, yeah. You're actually probably not even hitting the muscle that you think you're hitting, because you've taken what could be more of an isolation type movement and made it a compound movement. Yep. A very shitty cheating concentration curl can become a very good, shoulder lat movement. Yeah. Right. So, or it can just work that one muscle. And if you just work that one muscle, that added fatigue drop, because who wants to accumulate fatigue through that shit? No. You're already accumulating so much. And I explain it like a video game power bar, right? So like you go into, and I could break this out through a whole training phase, but you have so much life in that, right? Or so much energy left in the life that you have. Like, so you should go into a meet and you should have like 3 lives, but as the meet goes, you should be able to accumulate more lives, right? Yeah. Right. Just like in a video game. But in that training day, that energy bar gets decreased with every movement you do, every set you do. And if it's the squats are really hard, and it's triples or whatever it's going to be, you might suck 60% of that life out of that, which means you only got 40% left. Yeah. For the rest of the shit, right? And that might be the way that the coach or you want to have it structured, right? But what happens if it takes 80%? Yeah. Right. Or on the other side, what if it only takes 20%? But once you're dead, you're dead. So if it is that 30% left, and now you're doing all that high stimulus, high fatigue, accessory type of stuff, then you're in a deficit. So if the energy bar could go negative, you're going negative, which means that next training day, you're going to not be back at that 100%. Yep. You're going to be maybe 50 or 60. Now you take that over a 3-week phase or a 4-week phase, then the deload is maybe not even going to work. Yeah. Because there's a balance with all that. And one of the easiest ways to control that balance is what you're talking about. And probably most likely, and I would say certainly, get more muscle growth. Yep. From that. And it's a hard thing, man. It's just for powerlifters to really kind of grasp, because normally the default would be, if that first movement sucks 70%, 80%, you just don't do anything the rest. You're done. Yeah. Maybe a couple body weight movements and then you're the fuck out of there, which isn't a bad call. Yeah. Right. But
mitigate injury.
Yeah. But if there is enough left in there to be able to do those other things that are going to help the conditioning and help joint strength and stress and all that, it plays into that. But it's a tough one, especially if the person's already strong. Yeah. Because they can equate that to being why they're strong. Yeah. Right. So it's, how are you able to not get caught up in that?
Yeah. And it's doubly hard, because if you're stronger than your coach, you're like, yeah, but I'm stronger than you. So like, do I have to listen to what you say? And I made a post about that last night. I'm like, my ego has a black eye right now, because I was like, I squat 1,000 pounds. What is an 800-pound squatter going to teach me? What is I don't know how much Brianni squats, but she's probably going to yell at me for not knowing. But they completely restructured my squat, because I was folding forward on my squat and getting on my toes. I added in squat shoes, and it's almost like a completely different movement. But going into the American Pro 3, I was like, I don't really know how this is going to go. I squeaked out a 1,003 squat, and I was like, Hey, I'm still strong a little bit, but implementing new cues, and when I was benching, like a lot of times Joe was like, "Hey, are you using the lat cue?" And I'm like, "What lat cue?" He's like, "You don't have you've never been told how to engage your lats on squats?" I'm like, "No, I just balance the bar there." And then he was like, "What do you do with your hands on bench?" And I'm like, "I hold the bar." He's like, "Oh, we basically have to take a step back. You lift like an elite lifter, but you're not. So we need to basically go back to ground zero and look at form on everything." So like I added new hand cues on bench. I learned a lot of what I bench from Gene Rishlak through the time that I got to know him before he passed, and so I'm really good and grounded through my feet, but I had no idea what to do with my hands. And it's like spreading the bar and bending the bar, two different cues that engage the lats and engage and put the elbows in the right position, and like going about things in a whole different way. And it's you can muscle through a lot of things, but you don't want to. And that shit hurts,
Mm-hmm.
and that's when you get injured. And like good form means good health, good totals.
Well, it also means not falling out of the groove halfway up,
Oh yeah,
and so that all kind of plays into it well.
yeah,
One of the other things that is hard for people to really understand and comprehend is how you start, typically how you're going to finish.
yep,
Right. And on the bench, you can see this a lot. They just take it out and go. Like,
yeah,
oh shit. Like nothing's stacked, nothing's really set up that way. And I don't think these should be advanced principles.
yeah,
I think all these things, as soon as somebody commits to, I want to go down this path, should be implemented in there the same way that any other technique is implemented in
yeah,
any other sport that you ever do.
yeah,
Funny how powerlifting seems to be an outlier with that, where every other sport, you're learning the skill aspect of the sport, or they'll take one skill aspect and break it down into segments,
yeah,
and then build it back out, which good coaches do, in powerlifting, but a lot of times it happens later. And I've heard many say it's not worth doing that because as they get stronger, it will just happen naturally. And I'm like, nah, not in my experience. A shitty squat will become a less shitty squat if it's a little bit stronger, but it's still a shitty squat now under heavier load,
yeah,
which can create more chaos, more damage, over time. And if they're a genetic outlier, really, really good at it, well, now that's at a lot bigger weight. Now you're starting to deal with an ego of, what are you telling me? You only squat 400 pounds. I squat
yeah,
900 pounds. Like, shut the fuck up.
yeah,
When you can put that, and to some degree, there's some truth in that as well,
yeah,
right? Because weights feel different, in certain segments. It's like 800-pound squat's going to feel different than a 400-pound squat.
oh yeah,
And a 900 or 1,000 is going to feel different. The bar moves differently.
yeah, much differently.
Yes.
And the brand of the bar is too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
So with your YouTube and with the clients that you have, you're, for lack of a better way to define this, you're education based, right? So you're trying to help people understand, periodization and just the basic principles behind what we're talking about here. So if it's somebody that's new to the sport, and from some of the videos I saw on your YouTube channel, there's no bullshit in there. You're not trying to sell people shit. It's just straight up, here's the things that you need to know. And which sucks because you should have 1 million followers with that type of content, but you never will because that type of content isn't in the margins.
yeah.
And people are attracted to what's in the margins. Where did you find the best place to start with those people, with that demographic, as far as just educating them on basic training principles beyond a set as a group of repetitions? And, it's not like personal trainer stuff, but they got that. But now they were going to start branching off into, instead of doing ebook type training, which some good, some bad, but understanding what that ebook philosophy, what the philosophy was behind that ebook. Because I do think that's a good test for a lot of people that are trying to understand the process.
Yeah.
Is now most of those books are pretty easy to find.
Yeah.
I mean, you still should support the author and put all that out there, but they're pretty easy to find. If that's a task that I like to have people do, like go through them and try to peg, which type of periodization this kind of falls in, or dissect it. So, Alexander Bromley's done this with, his YouTube channel. He's actually taken some of these things and broke down a lot of these training ebook philosophies into oblivion, which is good because nothing's ever perfect, right? So to the authors out there, you shouldn't get butthurt, if something gets exposed that's not perfect, because you can't make a perfect program. But it's a good exercise to do, to be able to learn, to help learn, right?
Yeah.
Because a lot of people just, if they're not interested, they're not interested, but I assume people here are interested. So where's your tier one if you're trying to teach somebody about this training process?
What's the question?
When you go to educate people on periodization, right? Just in general and broad, where do you start?
So the beginner lifter is going to experience a lot of things that the advanced lifter is not going to experience. You still got newbie gains in there.
Mm-hmm.
So linear periodization doesn't work entirely. It works up to a point. If you're doing a percentage based linear periodization, where every single block you're adding 5%, eventually it's going to be calling for you to do 110% for sets of 2, and that's just not possible. That's going to cause a female athlete, going on my experiences from what I've seen, they're going to be like, I can't squat 110%. What's wrong with me? And I'm like, it's 110%. Why would that even be on your program as a training day, not even on the platform? And so for a beginner lifter, I'm looking at what's a program that's going to make sure that they're making progress without blowing their joints off. Because when I started lifting, I was maxing out every day when I went to the gym, and I'm like, why do I hurt all the time? But I was kind of making progress, but the injuries and the not like super bad injuries, but the process was kind of mitigating a lot of the gains that I could have made. Where if I used a different process, like I personally believe that one of the best programs for a beginner lifter isn't necessarily like the 5th set or the 1020 or the juggernaut or the cube or any of the modernized programs that like Dawson Windham, Death Grip Derek, and Joe Sullivan have out there, because those assume a level of experience in the sport. And the only program that I've seen that doesn't assume that is 531, where it's gonna make sure it's got blocks and make sure that you're making progress, but eventually the program's gonna stop working for a lifter. And instead of running it again and running it again and again and again until their eyes are bleeding because they're failing every set, that's when they plateau on that program. That's when they branch off to the more advanced programs like the 5th set or any of the other ones that I mentioned before. And then it gets to like a gray zone where you've got these, I don't want to say old school programs, like 1020 5th set and Juggernaut, where they've been around for a while and they've got a proven track record versus a lot of the newer programs that are utilizing timed rest periods and undulations in the deloads, where you're not deloading a single lift or not deloading all the lifts at the same time, kind of like adopting the principles from cube method, but also applying the new timed rest period, making fatigue ratios and all the variables out there, hypoxic response and neurological response to stimulus, and getting into the more and more sounding like a nerd than like an actual powerlifter. So like when I produce content for YouTube, I'm like, when I was a lifter starting to get into the sport, what do I wish that I had? And you'll go out there and the niche of strength sports and powerlifting, you've got guys who are super fun to watch, like Juju. Yeah, Juju.
Yeah.
He's a
John
little,
Call.
Yeah, he's a little out there, and I'm not gonna put a horse head on myself and strip down to boxer briefs and do front flips all around to try and explain, hey, here's what linear periodization is. But I've got a lot of information from my experiences, my research, and a lot of the people that I've talked to. Because like one of the best things that a lifter can do is help out at meets, because you meet a lot of people. Like I've talked with Tone Barbasio before he passed, Gene Rishlak before he passed, Vinny DiZenzo, he's still alive. Not everyone I talk to dies, but like Katrina Bellamisa, Rita West, like all Mindy Underwood, a lot of these lifters who, though they're not rewriting the record books now, they cemented that they were the greatest of their time. Like Rita West for a while was like the undisputed greatest female powerlifter out there. And now we've got Amber, who was in here yesterday benching. Like she's the greatest now. And I got to talk to her because I had all these experiences where I grew myself in the sport, and now I'm here because I've been able to take advantage of the opportunities that have been presented to me. And the easiest opportunity that's going to be presented to someone is, hey, help out at a meet. Everyone is desperate for spotters. You're not going to get in a judge's chair real quick. Not that anyone actually wants to be in a judge's chair. That's like joining the Supreme Court and saying everything you say is a dead verdict, and no one's going to complain about it. Mm-hmm. But it's I forgot the question again. I have this bad habit of going off.
Well, where you start on explaining periodization to somebody that's just getting into this, because there's different phases of how people stumble in.
Yeah.
Right. But there's definitely a distinct mark to where it's, I love this. I want to be good at this.
Yeah.
And they want to start trying to figure out what's going on.
Yeah.
Right. So
explaining fifth set, or not fifth set, 5-3-1. There's so many fives in powerlifting. I mean,
there really is.
Some of the girls are fives out there too, but explaining 5-3-1, because it's basically the most bare bones program out there. You start off, you do 5 at 70%, 3 at 80%, 1 at 90%. You progress, you add 5 pounds, you do that again. And you're like, this is linear progression. And then you note how the next block after a deload, it increases. It's 75% for 5. 85% for 5, 92.5 or 95% for 1, progressing through that, and be like, notice how that's progressing through that. Eventually it's going to break down for the lifter. They're not going to be able to do that again. You can either recycle that, do a down undulation and go through it like that, or you can go onto a different program like fifth set, where you've got the mesocycles, microcycles, and it's basically like 3 or 4 week blocks. Then you take a deload, then you've got a pivot and into a different kind of weak point, and you progress through that. You make sure the weak points become strong points before addressing the weak points that develop, because they're not the weak points anymore, and you made your weak points the strong points, and you're constantly trying to put out a bunch of fires at a different point, and eventually you get to a point where you're like, all right, person's strong, how do we progress through that? And you basically just talk through the different ways that you go about progressing things, what weaknesses show up. So like if someone is having a lot of knee pinch on their squat, a lot of people don't really know what's causing that. It's a imbalance between their quads and their glutes firing while they're squatting. So like, how do you fix that? Well, you make the knee pinch even worse by throwing a band around the knees, or you increase the stabilizers, or you increase the glute by doing like reverse hypers, or doing good girl, bad girls, doing hip thrusts, stuff like that. Make sure that the glutes are strong enough, especially if their squat is much higher than their deadlift, and because that's going to show them knee pinch. But I mean, if you look at lifters who set all-time world records, in Stacy Burr's all-time world record Wilkes, she had a bit of a knee pinch going on there. As long as it's not egregious to a point, do you fix it? Most of the time, yes, but sometimes it's no, but only if it's going to be their last meet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if we dial this all back, how do you explain to them what that 100% is to actually use as the base for all the percents that follow? For instance, in 5-3-1, it's going to be defined as take that number and automatically pull 10% off and then use that number. So that 70% really isn't 70, it's 60, right? So this is the first mistake I see a lot of people will be making. And as a beginner, it probably doesn't matter because they're going to get stronger so fast that it would almost be a disservice to stick to a straight linear program that's not going to have any ability for it to, undulate based upon technical changes they may make. But as it progresses through, that still becomes that becomes the one pinpoint that everybody's been trying to figure out. And that's where RPE comes from. That's where RR comes from. All these things come from trying to anchor what that actually is.
Yeah.
Where, old school is going to say that's whatever that number was in a meet.
Yep.
Right. But the meathead that lifts in the meet can think, well, I had 50 left, so do I add the 50 that I could have done on that day? You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So if you just hammered the 10-14 and it was easy, and everybody that knows you is like, man, you had 40 more pounds. Does that mean it's 10-50, or do you stay? That's where the first, and you peaked for that.
Yeah.
Right. So there should be a difference between a training max and competitive max, which I'll let you kind of get into that as well. And the greater that variance is, the better it is for the lifter.
Yeah.
Where I think one of the highest I think I've ever seen was Chad Wesley Smith, I think was around 15%.
Wow.
That's crazy, and granted, and that was raw, right? I see bigger when you're dealing with gear, because sometimes the gear, you're using different gear on the meet day than you would use otherwise. But that's a huge thing that needs to be defined and talked about, because if, on the extreme end, you got a multiply guy that's got a 20% variant. So then he's going to use that number. And then the majority of his training that's going to happen before the last 6 weeks is going to be in briefs only. Yeah, that's probably well over the max of what they could do in the briefs only.
Yeah.
But on the raw side, you're still dealing with in the 50-60% range, probably not that big of a problem.
Yeah.
The 80% range, now you're in the 90s, and you're in the 90s for more than 4 weeks. You could be in the 90s for 10 weeks.
Yeah.
But not know that. How do you go about navigating those conversations?
With a newer lifter, their competitive max, especially a lifter who hasn't come to me or hasn't had a coach before, their competitive max is going to be a lot closer to their gym max, because a lot of times when they come to me, they haven't had a peak before. And I just recently had a client who came to me, and I was like, all right, so when's your next meet? And he was like, it's this many weeks out. And I'm like, we have just enough time to run a peak. You're going to get no gains out of what I'm giving you, but you're going to have the central nervous system gains going onto the platform. He ended up PRing all 3 of his lifts, and he was like, yeah, I really like this program. I don't know where all that strength came from. And I'm like, that's from actually peaking your lifts differently. So a newer lifter, they're going to be closer to 1-to-1 with 100% being close to 100%, but you never really program over 95%. And then there's the neurological factors that really come in once you hit 95%. That's when all the bad habits start to rear their head. They can be as pretty as Farrah Fawcett with their squat all through training, but they're doing 50s, 60s, 70s, and it's looking really good. Once you throw 95%, that's when like the knee pinch comes in. That's when they start bending over. That's when their knee path is wrong, when their ankle mobility really rears its head, and you're like, all right, where this starts is probably going to be where their 90% is. Like on bench, I call it cardio arm syndrome, because you've got a dominant arm that you use more often, and you've got more fatigue in that arm. So it's going to, above 95%, it's going to be the one that kind of lags before it locks out. And I see it time and time again. And I'll see people opening on the platform. They've got that cardio arm, and I'm like, they're going 2 for 3 at a max at this meet. So stay close. So seeing that in their training, need the training videos in order to see that. But I generally don't program above 95% unless we're in a peaking phase. So if they're getting closer to a meet, and they're one of the easiest peaks that I kind of use, I use basically the peak that Greg had me use, because it's a little bit more straightforward and it's more cookie cutter. Is like week 1 is a 3x1 at 80%. Week 2 is a 2x1 at 90%. Week 3 is a 1x1 at 100% plus or minus 5 pounds. And then once you see that, with that accumulated fatigue going into the meet, you can base all of your numbers, what are going to go on the platform. Like if you want to be aggressive, 95, 100, and 105% of what you hit in that 3rd week of training. And then you've got the back down. So you get the super compensation, where you're doing a 1x1 at 90%, 1x1 at 80%, and then a 3x1 at 50%, and then you compete. And people are like, I feel like I'm just wasting my time in the gym at this. I'm like, don't worry about it. You'll enjoy it on the platform. It's going to be good. But training maxes, once they have that first meet under their belt, then you can really dive into it. It's like what you can play around a little bit. Like generally I'll do for a training max will be somewhere between 90 and 95%, unless they're a brand new lifter and you're able to play around with 97.5 or 100%, but never really get above 85%. You can only go about, I think it was 6 weeks. I had an intermediary coach in between Greg and Joe that I respect a lot, but we didn't really meld well. And he used RPE based training. So he'd be like, hey, do a 2x3 at RPE 8 or 9. I'm like, cool. I'm benching above 500 today. So I would go 6 weeks in a row, benching above 500, hitting new PRs every single week. And then I'm like, oh, I tore my pec. Cool. So you can only go above 85% is around where the threshold is before your CNS starts to kind of break down and kind of mush around, and you really increase that risk of injury. And so I kind of tell them, I'm like, you're not as strong as you are on the platform. So kind of take a step back and realize everything that you're doing in the gym might as well just be 135. It's like if you're a truck driver and you get caught speeding every single shift that you're working, but you get paid hourly, does that make sense? It's like, no. So taking a step back, being able to develop more stimulus and really adapt to the training a little bit better because you've used less weights, because when you do, it takes about 200 reps to develop good muscle memory. So if you're doing 200 reps and you're doing it with a broomstick, you're going to develop good muscle memory, and it's going to reflect when you're doing 95% or above. So if you're doing a lot of your training at like 60 to 75%, you're getting a lot of good reps in and you're not going into those bad habits. So really pushing and being like, hey, I want to lift heavier doesn't really make sense all the time. Sometimes it's necessary, but only when you get close to a meet. So the only time that I ever have myself or anyone go above 95% is when you're on the platform, because that's when it counts. And I haven't had any pushback on that yet, but yeah. I think I talked in circles there.
Well, not necessarily. It's the caveat that comes in all that is if they're in that phase with the newbie gains, or somebody is a new client of yours and their squat's just a mess, right? So then you clean the squat up, and it takes a little bit of time, but you clean it all up. That can add 50 pounds to their squat really, really fast. And so that has to be integrated in, to the train. First off, you need to understand that it's going to stick. Because it can regress, and that doesn't get talked about very much, because some people will just assume it's going to stay that way, but a lot of variables made that happen for that one day. But that has to, for that level of lifter, something has to kind of be built in to accommodate that, right? So do you have, some people will use AMRAPs to be able to do, to accommodate that, because if it's a triple, then they do an AMRAP and it's like 15. There's some strength there that was accumulated that you're not aware of. So it's, what tools will you use to kind of gauge that? Or is it just, the other way would be just to watch the actual set of 5, and it's, this week it was hard, this week it was hard, weight's increasing, this week's a complete joke, but the squat looks totally different. So how do you go about analyzing that for one, and then increasing the load if needed or not?
I when I run into that where it's obvious that their lift has really increased by a lot, I take a look at the Prolepins chart and I kind of push the boundaries a little more. So like I think the middle thing is like a 3 to 6 reps at like 80%. I usually have it pulled up because I don't have the memory bandwidth to memorize all that. But I'll kind of be like, all right, so what if they can do 8 with this data range? And I kind of push it like that, and then I'm like, all right, let's kind of take a step back. What if they do a 6x4 instead of a 3x6, and kind of increase the weight of, like, kind of linearly progress that to the point where, all right, now they're showing the reaction to the stimulus that I'm looking for in their training, so that I can adjust to that. And then I'm like, all right, we're here. We can kind of stay around here. We can kind of like thumbtack, this is where they are. and then kind of push them, hey, you might want to compete a little bit earlier so we can reset the numbers. Because every time they compete, they can reset their numbers. And that's really where all the bad habits show, where that above 95% comes and rears its head. And you're able to reset everything and be like, all right, fresh new training program. We've got new maxes. Let's look at what you're going to do, and it's going to look completely different than it looked before, because we've got this new data and we know where your strengths are, we know where your weaknesses are, we know where you need to be working on, because you've got this going on. So let's work these muscle groups and stuff like that.
Right. I'm going to repeat that back to you because that's actually really good. So I want people to kind of take this away as a takeaway. Correct me if I misunderstood anything that you're saying there. So if you start to see something like that, you're going to look at Prolipin's chart. You're going to see where they fall in that chart. Most likely, they're not going to fall on the higher end of that chart. Now, if they do, that will be a follow-up question that I have. But under the assumption that you just laid out there, they're not. So what you're going to do is you're going to make that next week. You're going to push them more to the higher end of that chart, but you're still staying within that 10% range of that chart, which it's a really good idea, to be able to do that. And because that still keeps them in that threshold, that's going to protect against what I mentioned earlier. That is this temporary? Is this for real?
Yeah.
What is that? Now, if it's falling on that, is that correct in what I just said?
Yeah, and we can push it even a little bit further, even too, if they're at the top end of that Prolipin's chart and they're still not showing the adaptation to the stimulus, you're not seeing the breakdowns that you normally would see at certain weight thresholds, then you can push it a little further and you recognize they're beyond the point of this single section of the Prolipin's chart, so we need to reset the numbers soon.
Yes, but you go there first, before resetting the numbers. Will this maximize that higher end? Then yes, it did, and it did for more than just one day, one training session. Then you can go to that next number, right?
Yeah.
That next bump up, right? You're not going 2 bumps up, but I could pull the chart. It would be cool for people to see, but search it. It's very easy to find. It's everywhere. And even with the pushbacks of that, because there's a lot of criticisms of that as well. It doesn't apply to powerlifting. It's Olympic weightlifting, It applies enough, to be a tool.
It guarantees progress.
Yes, it applies enough to where I can sit here and say all the same complaints about it that everybody else does, but the fact of the matter is, if it's covering within one standard deviation plus or minus of the bulk of the people you're ever going to work with, it's good enough. Like, nothing's going to be perfect, and that kind of I'm still going to get into this RPE type of thing, is it to ask how you kind of manage that, because that's always kind of been a tricky one, because like, what's the difference of, 8 RPE or 8.5 RPE and 2 RIR? And I mean, it's all kind of all the same shit when you kind of boil down into it. But the questions that I've asked everybody that's worked within those models is, am I allowed to get psyched up or not? Right. You see what I'm saying? Like, what mental state are you allowed to be in for this? Because that can make a big difference with that. And, there's just a lot of, and what it comes down to is, how is it anchored? Right. To where for any of those things to work, and let's say it's a scale of effort, and we're not talking intensity, percentage of 1 rep max, but just how hard am I training my accessories? You may say, I want that at like an 8. Right. But your definition of what a 10 is and my definition of what a 10 is may be vastly different. So I think I'm doing an 8, but I'm doing a 6 and until it's anchored somehow. Now Mike Toucher might anchor that with velocity. So there's some type of anchoring with that. How do you go about anchoring what that is with an athlete that you're working with, or even if it's a coach that you're working with, or are you just staying straight with the percentages? I'm staying away from your own training right now, but if it's an athlete you're working with, how do you go about anchoring that to be able to know, or do you just stay just with the percentage?
So when it comes to training the compound movements, the squat, bench, and deadlift, I stick to the percentages. And the Prolipin's chart, it's pretty much the Bible out there, and I can push and pull things based on that whole thing. But when it comes to the accessory movements and everything that comes after the main movement, you never max out your curl. So you can't base a percentage off of that. So you have to use RPE or reps in reserve. But I personally don't like RPE. It's almost like a necessary evil in order to program. And a lot of people, it's an RPE 6 until you misgroove, then it's an RPE 10, or until you miss something. And it's like asking someone how long they last in bed. They're gonna tell you 30 minutes, but you know it's 2.5. So it's like it's almost useless to be like, how much effort did you put into there? Because it's a catch-22. If they understand the process, then they're a really good lifter. But if they're constantly getting themselves injured or they're not making progress, then the coach is like, you just didn't understand it. So I don't really like that factor of the RPE. I personally prefer reps in reserve. And as a lifter develops through and learns how their body reacts to different stimulus, and how they feel the hypoxic response, and which is the burn and the pump and everything, and actually feeling the stimulus, which generally means that they have to reduce the weight and kind of tap into that mind muscle connection a little bit better. I like to keep, I don't like going to failure, because the amount of recovery that you have to do when you get to failure is almost leaps and bounds higher than if you have 1 or 2 reps in reserve. So I almost use RPE as almost like an inverted table for reps in reserve. So like an RPE 7 should have 3 reps in reserve, or like an RPE 9 should have 1 rep in reserve. And I try to keep an open line of communication with my lifters, like, hey, how's this going? I also add in the tempo, the 0132 tempo. Yeah, that's in the notes, because sometimes I have weird movements that I have. When I program my own clients, like I ask them, do you want 3, 4, or 5 days? And the 5th day is a trap because it's cardio. But so is the 4th day, because the 4th day is cardio plus stability work. And I've got this movement where it's like I'll do like bottoms up kettlebell incline dumbbell bench, where it's like you really want to max that out. You can be like, I can dumbbell bench the 125s. And then you've got the 20s in your hands, and you're like, I'm really close to failure because my stabilizers kind of suck. And it's like an entire paragraph in the notes, hey, here's how you do this. So I try to keep that open line of communication with my clients and be like, hey, where are you at? Where is this? Is this too much? Is it too little? Just let me know so that I can program you better. It's not like questioning the program, be like, hey, like last night one of my lifters texted me. He was like, hey, can we throw in Copenhagen planks? And I'm like, absolutely, and I'm going to make that murderous for you. You're going to regret requesting that, but you're going to be better for it. So I keep it almost like a floating anchor, where it's, if you have a really intense bench day, and you're using that power gauge, and you've used 80%, your numbers in the accessories might not move for 3 months. Like your RPE 7 when you're benching like a heavy 3x1 is going to be different than your RPE 7 when you're doing a 2x3. So it's the accumulated fatigue is a lot different. So it's almost like an asterisk being like, hey, here's where it is. Your RPE or reps in reserve should be around here. Just don't sandbag, please. Yeah.
One thing that I've noticed with lifters long term is there's plateaus, obviously, but that's not even a really good word to explain what I'm talking about. But you get to a certain total, and maybe when you hit X total, say it's 1800 or whatever it's going to be, your real strength, if you're able to actually display what you're capable of, may have been 2000, but the 18 was what that was. And you may float around that 18, 19 for 3 years. And during that 3-year time period, plateau, for lack of a better word, the training's a little bit different than when it bumps up, right? Because now it becomes, if you're at the bottom, the start of that plateau, in one sense, you really don't even have to get stronger. You just need to be the same strength, but display it better next time out, right? To where you totaled 2,300, I believe, in 2019, right? And it's like 2,340 now. So I could make the argument that you're kind of in one of those phases right now. But when the first time you hit that 2,300, you may have, if stars aligned, everything was great, that could have been like 2,450. Like who knows what the top end of that could be, or it could have been the last pound that you could have ever lifted on all that.
Yeah.
So and this is an important concept if somebody's looking at somebody's timeline competing, because you're going to see those blocks that kind of fall in there, and one can look and say they're not making any progress, and it's like, no, they're actually making the most progress right now. It just may not have displayed yet, during that time period. And if you follow somebody that's been in for a long period of time, you can actually graph it out and see. And then when that pops, it doesn't just pop by like 20 pounds. It may be 20 pounds here, 20 pounds there, but eventually it pops and it's like 80 pounds or 100 pounds. And then obviously the questions everybody has are like, dude, what did you do for this meet? Right. And it's a whole. Are you looking to boost recovery, enhance your sex drive, and improve performance in the gym? Do you think your hormones are out of whack and you're tired of getting the runaround from your doctor? Things like your hormones are just fine, stop lifting heavy weights, etc., etc., etc. I know what that feels like, as I've been down that road most of my life. This is why we've partnered with Marek Health. Marek Health is a premium telehealth platform that specializes in hormone optimization and preventative medicine, ensuring a better quality of life. Marek Health offers a table talk panel tailored for our listeners, featuring comprehensive tests like total and free testosterone, sensitive estradiol, and advanced markers like lipoprotein A and IGF-1. These comprehensive panels of up to 84 carefully selected biomarkers allow you to identify areas of enhancement and maximize your physical, cognitive, and sexual performance. It's much different than the panels you may get from your doctor. Choose between self-service options where you can select lab panels based upon decades of experience, or opt for guided optimization with your own health coach. Start with a detailed breakdown of your labs and receive personalized treatment options, both over the counter and prescription. Visit marekhealth.com/tabletalk and use the code TABLETALK to get 10% off your first order. Marek Health isn't just about better health, it's about empowering you to take control of your well-being. Summer's here and so is the heat. I've spent most of my life training in unconditioned gyms, and I know most of you that are training in garage gyms, private gyms, black iron gyms, know what I'm talking about when I say the heat sucks. It kills your motivation to go to the gym, it kills your performance, but it doesn't have to if you keep your electrolytes up. That's why today's episode is sponsored by Element. Element is a tasty electrolyte drink with everything you need and nothing you don't. This means lots of salt with none of the junk. No sugar, no colors, no artificial ingredients, no gluten, no fillers, no BS. It contains an electrolyte ratio of 1,000 milligrams of sodium, 200 milligrams of potassium, and 60 milligrams of magnesium. Element can help prevent and eliminate headaches, muscle cramps, fatigue, brain fog, sleeplessness, and other common symptoms associated with electrolyte deficiency. Right now, Element is offering a free sample pack with any drink mix purchase. Get yours at drinkelement.com. This deal is only available through the Table Talk link.
And now for a brief word from our sponsor of today's video. Hi, I'm Patrick, and you motherfuckers thought I'd actually get a sponsor for this video? Huh? No. Look at me. Who would do that? So I'm sponsoring my own video, and I'm poor as shit. So I have a Printify store. Yay. Links in the description. That's the word I was looking for. Link for the Printify store in the description. We've got shirts like dots. Shirts like is my control. The tism is chronic, but the total is iconic. And we have a plethora
of apparel for women as well. Pay me.
Process. So with the phase that you're in right now, what are the things that you're trying to optimize to be able to in, to be able to, when you get on the platform in, I think you said 12 weeks or so,
Yeah, something
that,
like that.
you're able to display your strength to the highest degree?
So since that first 2300 total, I've done a whole lot of changing. I've hired a nutritionist. I've completely changed the way I approach my accessories. I've got a new coach. And at that 2300, I believe I was 387.
So I'll stop you real quick. And why? Like, why did you decide to change everything after that one?
I had a gut feeling that something was wrong. Like like I mentioned before, the little guys were competing with the big guys. I was like, if I continue, their trajectory is beyond mine right now, and I know something needs to change. Otherwise, I'm going to be stuck here for a lot longer, and they're going to pass me. And
well, this is interesting to me, right? Because it's still a 150-pound PR when you did that, where most people would think everything's right.
Yeah.
You know, so what about you made you think this is not right? It needs to be better. Is it solely just looking at those other?
At that meet,
you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
In this situation, you know, somebody just breaks their PR by 150 pounds, breaks a 2,300 pound total. The last thing that you would expect them to think is, oh, my shit's fucked up. I need to start looking at this a little bit better.
Well, it was the next, it like started to set in that I needed to change something, which is when I started doing, increasing my, time between training sessions. It was around that time when I started training every third day rather than doing, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. It was like, I have 2 days off in between every training session. And, then I competed at the American Pro, and I got my opener squat on my third attempt. And I'm like, the thing that's missing is accountability. And so Greg and I parted ways after that meet, and I started with Joe, and we fixed, I threw in squat shoes, which I thought they were going to be a 1-to-1 change, and it's absolutely not. Because when you add a heel to your foot, your foot becomes a triangle, and the position of the center of gravity needs to change due to the geometry of things. It's a point called the centroid, which is in the bottom third, closer to the right angle of a triangle. And so you need to bring it back so you feel more on your heels a little bit better. And at the American Pro 3, when I did the 1,003 squat, I pretty much good morninged it. And at the I know it was a meet in Natick, my first 2,300 total, I had a habit. My first squat looked beautiful. My second squat, it looked like a good morning. And then I brought it all back together, and it was all good for the third squat. My bench, I think I went 3 for 3, so I didn't really have any issues there. But I kept tweaking my pecs. So after that 2,300 total, I was prepping for another meet, and in the 100% week, I actually tweaked my quad, and I missed a 1,000-pound squat in the gym. And I didn't realize a tort until I went home, and I was like, my leg really hurts. So I had to pull out of the meet, and I was like, I'm peaked for this right now, and I don't want to waste a peak and everything that went into peaking. And so I did a bench only meet, and up to that point, I'd been like, bench only is gay unless you're putting 700 pounds on the bar. And I'm like, or if you're injured, just to not make myself a hypocrite. But I that's when I hit my 635, and I got the exact same injury in my left pec that I got in my left quad. So I had micro tears all across my left quad, micro tears all across my left pec. It crinkled all the way down and crinkled all the way up. Like, I dive bombed the bottom third of the bench. I was like, I'll let them take it. And then I got at the bench, and I was like, maybe I can do it. And I locked it out, and I was like, cool. I'm not taking a third. That's definitely not a good choice. But What was the question?
Well, you were getting into how you changed the squat
Oh,
when you
yeah.
went into the heel and how you had to change it. Now, when you went into that heel and changed the squat, is that when you brought, I'm trying to look at your body weight here, and all it says is 308 plus. So, oh, here it is. So did your weight go down after you put the shoes on as well? Was that part of it? So you go in the heel shoes. Did you start dropping body weight as well at that time, or were the heels before when you were trying to keep the body weight at 380 or something like that?
Yeah, it was at I think
377. Yeah, 377 is the highest I see. Unless,
well, my doctor gave me a pat on the back because I was
whatever.
387 at one
Yeah.
point, and then I walked in, I was at 350. They're like, "Good job.
Yeah.
You must feel so good." And I was like, "Absolutely not. Get out of here." I need to
Yeah.
go to
So
the vet."
actually, no, it didn't. So when did the heels come in?
After the American Pro, because I knew that I was
Okay.
having
Okay.
depth
All right.
issues.
Yep. Got it. Mm-hmm.
But if you look at the American Pro back, I had about 5 years where I had the same deadlift. I think it was, what was it, 8 years ago today? I hit my first 700-pound deadlift.
Yep.
And that was in a push pull. And then I basically did the tango with 700 at every single full power meet until the American Pro. And I was like, I'm having grip issues because every time I drop my underhand would drop the bar at lockout. And I'm like, there's something wrong with that. I'm bloating. I took up knitting to try and increase the amount of recoverability I have in my hand so I can work on my grip issues a little bit better. So when I hit the point, I'm like, the drastic change that needs to come is we need to approach body weight differently. It's the old school methodology of mass, it takes mass to move mass. True, but we can do it better. It takes good mass to move mass. So I hired Traci Tate, and before I hired her, I'd never gotten along with a nutritionist. They were like, you should be at 2,000 calories a day. And I was like, I'd rather masturbate with sandpaper than do that. They're like, eat your vegetables. And I'm like, there's no nutritional value in those. I take a vitamin. Cool. But Brianni, she and I have been very communicative. We've butted heads a lot. And that's mostly on my part because she wants me to be healthy and I just want to be jacked as fuck. But she's been more right than wrong. I don't think she's ever been wrong, but I noticed I started looking at numbers on open powerlifting, and you can kind of see a bell curve develop when you look at the body weights of people. Even if you get rid of sumo versus conventional deadlifts, you see a bell curve form at around like 220, 242, 275, especially with Dan Grigsby of the heaviest deadlifts. So I was like, don't look at hook grip, don't look at sumo, don't look at conventional, just take a step back, deadlift as a whole. You are better at it if you are smaller, but you've also got Hafthor Bjornsson pulling 501. We're going to ignore Eddie Hall for this argument because he's just a freak of nature, but we've got these really lean guys and they're moving their deadlifts even better. I'm like, I don't care what my total is at the next meet. I just want to have a respectable deadlift because the average squat is like 800 now. The average bench is like 500 now. So I'm like, I'm above that. I'm cool. But the average deadlift is 900. So I'm basically playing around with the high school girls at this point. And I want to actually be able to be competitive in my own weight class. So I forgot I was talking with Dan Bell or Garrett Denham, but I think it was Dan. And he mentioned how he kind of approaches training with sleeves versus training with wraps. And he was like, you've never competed in sleeves before. And you're really used to the things that you have going on in wraps. And you're really comfortable in the wraps. You probably get a lot out of your wraps. So you should probably do a meet in sleeves. And I was like, okay. So I really humbled I didn't humble myself. The squats in sleeves humbled me. And at my last meet, the Ghost Clash 3, I had a pretty bad squat day. Peaking for that, I thought I was going to be mid nines, and I ended up with only taking 2 attempts at the meet and getting about, I don't actually know it was on the bar, but I know I wasn't happy with it. And I've discovered that I have patellar tendonitis, and I need to approach the ways that I'm going about things with my knees and everything a little differently. And that I'm really shying away from certain things in my squat because I've got this patellar tendonitis, and it feels like my kneecap is getting torn off every time I squat without wraps on, because you wrap up, you just go tight enough so you don't feel anything. That's how people should go about their love lives. But so I threw the sleeves on. I thought they were going to be just like wraps, like everyone says they are. And I really got humbled. And I'm like, so I knew that my total wasn't going to be big. So I was like, I don't care what my total is. I want to compete in sleeves, because you can't say something's gay unless you've done it once before. So sleeves are gay.
Yeah.
If your homie is a little shy around the other guys and says it's gay to be into them, just know that they've done that before. But I was like, there's got to be something to these lighter lifters having a bigger deadlift than me. A bunch of these really young guys, like I saw a British Great Britain lifter yesterday posted a 400 kilo conventional deadlift at 19 years old. I don't know what his name is, but I was like, these are little guys. They're deadlifting more than me, with the exception of Eddie Hall and Benedict Magnuson. It's always the little guys. You've got Yuri Belkin, I could say Eric Lillybridge, Dan Green, like all the greatest deadlifters of all time. They've been really small. So there's got to be something to that. And I'm like, I've got thick fingers. What if I lose a bunch of weight? But I got to do it in a way, because whenever you see these super heavies who are just like, I am tired of being fat and uncomfortable all the time, I struggle to wipe my ass. I'm like, I don't have that struggle, but they always lose like 60, they get below 300. Their squat goes to shit, their bench goes to shit, but their deadlift goes up.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, so we got to do it in a way that we can do that. So we took a 14-month cut from the American Pro 1 to it was a 6-month cut from the American Pro 1 to the to the Ghost Clash 3, where I went from 352 on the American Pro 2 platform to 328 on the Ghost Clash platform. And I was lighter, and we developed this plan after that, which I was a total asshat about. But I spoke with my coach Joe Sullivan, my nutritionist Brianni Taylor, and I was like, we should approach bodybuilding or powerlifting weight classes almost like bodybuilding. And we've got these gay meets where I'm going to be in sleeves every 12 months, and we've got the super cool meets where we're cool and we feel good about ourselves. The gay meets, we're going to have a lower total. We're going to be in sleeves, might as well be gay and be super small too. And these big meets where we actually care about our total, be as big as possible, or big as they'll allow me to be. They won't let me be 400 unless I'm like 10% body fat, which maybe. No.
Yeah. Yeah.
But wraps and heavy. So I'm bulking up right now, and I'm at like 352, 12 weeks out from the American Pro 3. And probably the biggest change between that first 2,300 total is completely revamping. Like, I've added new foot cues, I've added lat cues and eye cues for squats. I've added two new hand cues for bench, and for deadlift, I've gotten. At one point when I was doing, I cut down from like that 377. My heaviest was 387, according to my doctor. I competed at the American Pro 2 at 352. I was able to get in position because the belly was smaller. So that change allowed me to actually get into position and do the cues that I've been yelled at the entire time that I've been lifting to actually perform. So the biggest difference between that first meet and all the meets in between, and it's like these past meets have been like the little kid who's like, my dad can beat up your dad. My dad's getting out of prison soon, and this next meet is when he's coming off parole, and he's gonna take names.
Yeah, so it's because the deadlift was 771.
Yeah,
I believe is what that was. So that was the sleeve meet. Yep. Right. So is that sleeve meet, or was that sleeve meet part of the bigger picture that goes first, and then leading into this to put you in the position that you are now, leading into the next wrap meet with the intent of actually having that 771 or more, in place with the squat as the weight comes back up again.
Yep. So at the Ghost Clash 3 where I hit that 771, I missed 799 just at lockout. And at the American Pro 2, I missed 770 or 779, which would have given me a 2400 total twice because they say it was a soft lockout. The only the way that the deadlift is progressing, losing that weight and recomping into back to the same weight, basically maintaining the variable of body weight, but changing the variable of body composition is really changing the way that we're approaching the meets, because my resting heart rate is much lower. Like last year on meet day, it was 77, but now it sticks around at like between 65 and 67. And so I'll be better in a position to be recovered on the platform and not be dying and gasping for air going into deadlifts. So I forgot the train of thought that I was on.
Well, I'll just bring this down to where with that meet there, the squat didn't go as planned. And this is one of those hypotheticals, but you've been doing this long enough that it has validity. Where do you think the squat could have been on that day at that 2 or 3? I think it's 322.
328.
328.
The real variable isn't about body weight or anything like that. It was how poor my patellar tendonitis was on the day. So that was probably as heavy as I could have gotten. And I think I only added 3 pounds to that. And it was my first ever time competing in sleeves. So whatever I hit was going to be a sleeve PR. And I didn't really care too much about what I hit on squats, because just like talking about a new lifter having to get their first lift under their belt before you can really play around with the training percentages and deal with that data, is I just needed my first sleeve meet under my belt so that we can play around with, all right, so here's where we're at. We have a better sense of where your squat is, because I don't really go into wraps until I'm about 12 weeks out, or the way that my CNS responds to wraps is a little differently. I have to do like a week on wraps, a week off wraps, a week on and off, and going into the meet. So it's actually 14 weeks out. So I'm going into wraps I went 2 weeks ago, took a week out of wraps, and then I'm going back into wraps this week, and then I'll probably be off wraps next week and all the way up until the meet. But
so if I'm looking at this correctly, because the bench is essentially about the same.
Yeah.
Bench is the same, deadlift was higher. Had this been a wrapped meet at that same body weight, it still would have been under your best, but not as much as one would suspect. Right.
Yeah.
So with this meet, it's pulling it all together.
Yeah.
So that's the plan. So what changes in this last off season have been made to get you to the starting gate, to where that's what I call when you start prepping the starting line, to be able to put you at that starting gate now in a healthier position. Because as I said yesterday, and this is true with any top lifter, it's the whole game now is to get as least fucked up as you possibly can, because it's going to happen, but to minimize that as much as you can. So the more fresh, I guess that'd be a way to put it, you can start, the better the outcome would be.
Yeah.
So what has been implemented in this past off season, which I don't think there is such a thing as an off season, but this past off season, that you hadn't implemented before? Training wise, let's go training wise. Well, let's just put a cap on this nutrition thing. So with the nutrition changes, I'm going to assume that your recovery is better.
Way better.
Your
feels like cheating.
Yes, your brain fog is better. I mean, across the board, pretty much everything is better with that.
Yep.
Right. So as your weight's going back up and the calories are coming in, how are you managing that increase in calorie intake with because I'm going to assume there's still some shit in there, but how are you maintaining the degree of how much shit has to be thrown in there to be able to hit the calories that you need?
Force feeding's a learned skill, I believe.
Well, it's a learned skill, but it's a lot easier if it's just a bunch of crap.
It is. So my first meal of the day, it changed in the off season because I was getting a bit of insulin resistance before I got my blood work before the Ghost Clash, which really made us lean farther into the cut, and we got a little bit lower than I had wanted to be. Like I wanted to be like 340, and they were like, no, we're still going. We'll know how low you need to be once we get your second blood test in. I'm trying to make sure that my liver's healthy, and that my body was my metabolism and liver and everything was running up to par. So we cut down to 328, and coming back up, I noticed my first meal of the day was it was 3 eggs and 180 grams of 93.7 beef and a bagel. And I'm supposed to take a 10-minute walk after that meal, and I take my dog for a walk, and he's very active, and I turned him into a super toddler by trying to tire him out with more and more walks, and now it takes like multiple 30-minute walks for him to be sleepy at night. And I was taking him for a walk, and I was like, the world is spinning, everything's upside down, I feel lethargic and very not good. And I texted my coach and nutritionist, and they're like, you are hypoglycemic, you need more carbs in the morning. So building up to the point where I no longer have that insulin resistance, and adapting to the changes in my body composition. Yeah, I'm still eating like 800 grams of rice a day, a pound of beef and chicken a day. But I've also got a couple of like cheater things where it feels like cheating, but it's not quite, where it's like multiple bagels with honey or crumpets with jelly at the end of the night to kind of spike the insulin while I'm going to sleep, so the body can utilize the IGF-1 that naturally gets excreted whenever you eat food and when you sleep, and try and create a perfect storm of recovery. But not really eating a lot of crap, but the biggest difference between the cut and the bulk, other than the volume of food, is having 2 free meals or cheat meals or refeed meals, deflux meals, whatever pronouns the meal's gonna have these days. But I get 2 of those a week, but it's timed differently than previously. Like after deadlifts, I'm allowed a meal where it's not restricted, and I can have whatever I want, but I tend to go out and do Uber Eats or whatever. And when I come back, the only thing open is Domino's, and I end up shitting my pants afterwards. But and then Sunday, the day before, I guess it's Saturday now since I adjusted my week, the last meal before I go to sleep, before the training week starts, I get a free meal and basically kickstart the recovery process. So it's less of it's less of getting calories in per se. It's getting the right calories in at the right time to for a specific goal, like whether or not it's for recovery or fueling for the next day, like managing the carbohydrates, because carbs doesn't reduce the amount of inflammation your system has, but it's a more readily available fuel source than fats, and fats don't promote as much inflammation in your system. So you have more fats as a fuel source on rest days than you do on training days, and more carbs on training days than fats, but the calories kind of stay very similar, within 500 calories. But being a fat guy, I probably shouldn't know that, and it's just cool being able to. You don't expect the 350-pound guy to be able to be like, hey, you might not want to eat that, you'll get fat. Sounds hypocritical.
Well, yeah, in a way, but you've reached this point in your strength training career that everything matters.
Yeah.
Right. So food is fuel. Right. Yeah. So, I mean, younger super heavyweight powerlifting, pretty much get away with anything.
Yeah.
You're probably going to cover all your nutrient needs in 7,000 calories a day, even if it's all horse shit. I have a hard time saying that there's going to be a deficiency anywhere with that many calories.
Yeah.
But with the inflammation, the energy source, and everything that you're talking about, those become more important when you're dealing with one of those, plateau, for lack of a better word, areas. You can't, many can, but I couldn't, and I'm sure you're kind of the same way. You can't go through all that and then at the end of it think, well, maybe I should have taken this a little more serious, because then you look back and it's like, fuck it. That may be the biggest driver.
Yeah.
But you don't know because it was never dialed in.
Yeah.
Before, even though you might have thought that you were all in, right?
Yeah.
But you weren't, because I like to say you're all in for the things you want to be all in for, but not necessarily the things that are going to make you the best.
Yeah. At one point I was like, I'm 100% on plan. And then Brianna and Joe were like, all right, write down what you're eating every day. I was like, I'm only 30% on plan.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, all right, now you are journaling whatever you're eating every single day. And this was when we just got my blood results back, because they were like, it shouldn't be like this. Are you doing something different? And I was teasing Brianna because I ate peanut butter on a training day, and peanut butter is not everyone thinks this is a source of protein, but just emphasize butter in the word and you'll understand what it's an actual source for. But I was having too many fats on a training day, which was a cardio day of all things, when I was like, it's barely a training day. I'm just doing a bunch of bike sprints. And she yelled at me. So I always tell her that I have a traumatic experience of her yelling at me for eating peanut butter on the wrong day. Not that it wasn't on program, but it's, yeah.
So how has the training changed?
I have leaps and bounds more endurance, and the recoverability is, I feel like I'm cheating. Right after the Ghost Clash 3, I had a training, like the first training day, Joe was like, oh, okay, we've got a 3x8, 525, and then we're going to get into our working weight. And I ended up puking and passing out after 2x8. And I was like, something's not right. And he was like, let's try it again the next week. And that's when we discovered I had the hypoglycemia popping up, and we adjusted my nutrition in the morning before training. And we I don't know if we just completely pivoted the way that we were going about our training, because he worked up and we stepped back to the mid 400s for sets of 8. It was 3x8 at 4 something. And then we got closer and closer and closer. We got to 525, and I was like, I'm a little nervous for this. And it was one of the easiest training sessions I ever had. And then I was like, all right, so we're done with this cycle, right? Next week it was 545. I was like, are you just working me to 605? And then I just got a maniacal laugh as a response. And then eventually I hit 605 for 8. And I was like, this is something I could never have done if I hadn't implemented all the things that they've had me doing, like daily step count of 10,000 minimum a day, the nutrition and nutrition timing, and being on it with the hydration, supplementation, and recovery aspects. And really the only factor that I haven't optimized to the point of oblivion is the everyday life stress, because your body can't tell the difference between emotional, mental, and physical stress. So like your body's going to respond to a 800-pound squat is the same way that it's going to respond to having to present in front of a board meeting, or if you're going to make a large purchase and you're trying to budget for that, and that prolonged amount of stress versus an entire training block, your body's going to respond the same way. So if you can mitigate a lot of the like life stressors, then you're going to be better at training. Your body's going to recover a little bit better. And that's one of the things that I haven't done well with, and that Joe's been helping me. Joe and Bree both, and a little bit of Hunter Henderson have helped me kind of accept a lot of my faults and try to fix a lot of the flaws and errors that I have in my personal life. And I do need to get a lot better, a little bit more accountable in my personal life, because the discipline and accountability I have in the gym and with my nutrition now, it's like almost military precision. But at home, I'll be like, I can stay up till 1. I don't have to wake up for anything, when I should really be to bed at 10, waking up at whatever 8.5 hours after that is, and being like budgeting better, making my own coffee at home instead of running on Dunkin' and doing stuff a little bit financially better. And but a lot of the training differences is outside of the gym, which is promoting my performance and recoverability for everything that's going on inside of the gym, like the nutrition and taking a little bit more responsibility with my personal life than I have previously, and growing as a person and trying to actually be an adult than an oversized toddler.
Well, you mentioned bike sprints and stuff like that. So when you're talking that anaerobic cardio aspect, is it just that, or with the recovery ability in the cardio and the heart aspect, is it all steps, or is it also HHIT or HIIT, like high intensity interval training? Is that being implemented with that, or is it just all the step count?
Right now, while I'm on the bulk, the recomposition, it's all steps. But when I'm on the cut, like before the Ghost Clash 3, it was on non-training days, 15,000 steps a day. So I have a membership to my local Planet Fitness, and it's real nice watching the Patriots games while getting my steps in. No one's there; it's empty. It's awesome. But that's also when I have the high intensity bike sprints, where it's like a minute sprinting straight, 2 minutes not sprinting, or the reverse, and then hop off the bike and then do 30 air squats. So I'm in my squat shoes the whole time, and I hate it. People were staring at me. But
how was that the first time you started to do this, and how was it implemented? Because I'm going to imagine if you all you were doing steps, and then this gets thrown in, what's that first session feel? First off, what do you think going into the first session, and then what's it feel like, and then what do you think after that first session?
So the first session, there's a note that said nasal breathing only. And I felt like I was drowning, and it was like it was like fall time, and I get basically, my seasonal allergies are so bad that it's basically seasonal asthma. So I was so stuffed up, and I was choking and everything, and like I would puke about twice every session. And I was like, man, I can squat 800, 900 pounds almost any day. I can't do bike sprints for shit. This is bad. But the more frequently that I did it, and more that I stuck to it, the easier it got. And then it got to the point where I'm like, why can't I get my heart rate above 140?
Well, it's because you got in shape. You know, a funny story. I ran into that same thing for a period of time, to where it was more steady state cardio. And it was, I don't know what, maybe it was 120 or something like that. I was trying to maintain my heart at it. 10% grade incline for time or whatever it was. And this was going on for a long time. It was pretty easy to do. Then it became really fucking hard to do. Right. And I had to see my doctor at the time, who knows all this kind of shit, knows his way around all that. And I posed this question, like, I got something I really haven't been able to wrap my head around. And he looked at me like I was a fucking idiot. Right. And, you know, just reminded me of that. That's called getting in shape. Your body's adapted to that. So you have to increase the intensity if you want to be able to get in there. And then it was more like, or I could just deload off of it, you know, and pull back out of shape and then bring it back in, so I don't have to end up being, you know, doing sprint work, which I was trying to avoid, you know, during that time period. While this was going on, and your normal training is still going on as well, and did you see a drop when you started it? And then I assume it started to rebound afterwards, because that now you added another stimulus you have to recover from, on top of all the other stimulus that you're adding.
Yeah.
So what did the drop feel like, if at all? And then what did that, once you got into shape, how did that start to feel with the other days?
I think it's more like a prolonged drop. Like we're still like it was almost. I've been words. Um, like total wise, my total did drop at the last meet. And I basically knew everything was going to drop. Losing body weight is going to make my squat and bench go to shit, and increasing that cardio. It 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 took about 2 weeks for my everything else, all the training to like rebound for that. And I was like, is it really only 2 weeks to implement some sort of cardio into making things feel better and recover faster? And amazingly it was. And all my lifts started progressing a little bit better. I started recovering, and I was able to um, uh, lift heavier more frequently. And when I was with Greg on fifth set, I would be able to tell, all right, my body's feeling extra fatigued. I need a deload now. And the way that Joe has me doing deloads, it's more like a downward undulation where I'll deload one thing here or one thing there, and it's usually like it'll be like a cluster set of deadlifts will be like 15 or 8x2 with at like 455, maybe a deficit to make it a little harder, but you've only got 60 seconds rest, maybe 30 seconds rest, where it's like you're still getting a lot of cardio, but you're not getting that CNS fatigue. And so you've got the low, the volume's gone down, the intensity's gone down. So you've got a little bit of ability to recover, but you're still getting cardio. Where like I remember, what was it, Dom Mazzetti said cardio is the ability to lose gains, and I'm like, no, it's the ability to it's recovery potential is cardio. So I was able to recover faster, and I didn't feel like I was like, when I first started, I felt like I was drowning. I was like, Joe, I need a deload. I need a full week off. I need a deload. And he was like, bite the pillow. We're still going in raw. Let's keep going. You're a big strong boy, you can do this. And like as the cardio increased and I got more in shape, I was asking less and less for a deload. And I think between the American Pro 2 and Ghost Clash 3, I didn't take a single deload, where it was like we just had the undulation. So he didn't have to adjust his program for me on a weekly basis as often. And this current cycle, I just took a deload a couple weeks ago, but it was almost like we're going to take a kind of downward undulation in your training volume because we did a lot of intense high rep, high cardio amount of stuff, and we want to deload so that we can pivot to the heavier stuff. So it's like the deloads are more intentional because we're not really dancing around the fact that I'm not as athletic anymore.
With your squat, there's a common factor that I've seen with lifters when the squat gets over a grand and the frequency drops, right? Some will be twice a month, some once a month. It doesn't mean that they're not squatting the other days. It just means that heavier loading drops.
Yeah.
While you don't know yet, because you're not completely into this prep, well, I guess the first question was, did you notice the same thing once you got over a grand, that the frequency of the real heavy squat training had to drop to a couple times a month? It couldn't be every week.
Yep.
As it was before. Now, do you think with this added conditioning that same thing is going to apply, or it may still apply just because of the spinal loading?
Yeah.
But would it potentially not have to apply because you'd be in better shape and hopefully potentially able to recover from the heavier bouts for more frequent loading during that phase?
Well, that's one of the things that we're trying to figure out right now, because I haven't heard of any super heavyweights in the past doing this amount of cardio, amount of.
That's why I'm asking.
Yeah. So we don't know yet, but it's exciting to think that we won't have to, because after I did the my 1014, that's when I did the pull back, and I did training every third day. But now, before the Ghost Clash and before the American Pro 3, I was training 5 days a week, and I'm only training 4 days a week right now. But it's almost like spooky. We can see everything coming together, and we're like, we don't want to say what's going to happen. We think it's going to happen. Things are going to go really well, but we don't want to say how well, because we don't want to jinx it, because it's just it's there. And we can see the light not the light at the end of the tunnel, but it's like a specter looming over. It's like we're about to do something cool.
Well, it's going to be interesting to watch because it's, and you know a lot of these guys as well, so you've seen that same pattern to where, and I get the spinal loading aspect, like I get that, but there's still that other aspect of what if the recoverability was the same in that bigger guy that is in the lighter guys.
Yeah.
And you brought up earlier, a lot of the lighter guys are lifting the same weights, you know, even if it's within 100 pounds, how much difference is that really on the spinal loading, as long as they're not, you know, fucking groove up for whatever reason. You would think it should apply, right? But so it will be interesting to watch. You know, it's very interesting to watch because that becomes a dilemma in itself. You know, as if that's not the case, and then you're peaking for a meet, but you know you can only handle that real heavy 1,000+ squat or 950+ squat once every 3 weeks. Like, how the fuck, you know? That becomes its own programming clusterfuck in itself, right? Because you got to start sooner. You know, all these things kind of go into play because you still need to do it X number of times. Now, it's some people I've known it's kind of down to once a month, right? So if you need to actually handle that weight 5 times, fuck that. Now your peak phase is kind of spread out over 5 fucking months. And now that creates an issue for the bench. It creates an issue for all this other kind of stuff. So very interesting to see with the podcast that you're on, the 2,300 pound plus podcast, right? So everybody on there, you know, totals 2,300 pounds. Except for two. But what would be some of the commonalities that you see amongst those larger total guys? Because everybody trains differently, right? So it's every guest I've had on the podcast that's top level power lifter, they're all training differently, right? But there are common factors with all of them. Right? What are some of the common factors that you've seen, or that you guys would say you guys share?
We all have a pretty strong sense of accountability among ourselves, for ourselves and with each other, because we all share our training videos with each other, and we've got a group chat, and we bounce a lot of ideas off of each other. Like Fernando Arias, top 308 conventional deadlifter, he showed us what his deadlift warm-up was, and he took like 2 or 3 deadlift warm-ups, and then he was deadlifting I think it was like mid 800 pounds for reps. And I was like, what if I do that for my own training? Because I know that Dan Bell on meet day, he takes 2 warm-ups, and then he'll open at 1,003 on squats like he did at the Ghost Clash. I'm like, and then we look at like Jesus Oliveras. He posted, he had a couple weeks where he was posting his warm-ups, and he was taking maybe 3-4 warm-ups before squatting 800-900 pounds. And so it's like we see a lot of things like that, and we bounce ideas off of each other, and we kind of try things on ourselves, and we're like, hey, there's actually merit to this. And none of us really make excuses for anything. It's like, this was shit because my recovery's shit. Or like Justin Zottle's been talking about how the best training partners will was it Stan Efferding once said, the best training partner is gonna put his heel to your throat and make sure that you finish what you started, and make sure that you are accountable for what you say you're gonna do. And we all have that. And a lot of the commonalities between our training is well, Shane Haller and Craig Foster have a very similar training style because they trained in the same gym for a while, up until Shane recently moved. But so it was a lot of higher reps. And then Justin Zottel and we both are coached by Joe Sullivan, and then Jesus Oliveras, Fernando Arias. He's got his own thing, but it's we all have a high amount of frequency, I guess. A lot of volume, and we've bounced the ideas off of each other a little bit, almost like the amount of volume that you put in a block is almost like the diving board stretching out before you dive into a pool of peaking. So it's like the higher you put the diving board and further stretch it out, the more air you can get to do more flips before you actually dive into the pool of competing. So we all have a lot of volume in our training, and all volume with a purpose.
So how would you define volume?
Sets times reps times weight.
Okay. Now, are you counting the accessories when you look at the total volume? Because I would define volume as sets times reps, right?
Yeah.
Workload would be sets times reps times
Yeah.
weight. That's fine. I just put that out there because it's like intensity,
Yeah.
right? If you talk to a bodybuilder, the intensity is really effort. But if you're talking to a power lifter, intensity, we're thinking percentage of a 1 rep max.
Yeah.
So there's no right nor wrong in how this is all kind of explained. But when you're dealing with volume, that can be, when you're saying high volume, that can be tricky, because if your last exercise of tricep pushdowns is 10 sets of 10, there's 100 reps, right? And that 100 reps might be 5 times more than the number of total reps that were done in that 90% or 80% plus block of that whole training that falls in within there. So when you're saying the higher volume, just for the listeners to kind of understand, you're speaking about in the main things that count for 90% of the output.
Yeah, the squat, bench, and deadlift. We don't really talk about the accessories that much, really.
Well, and because you guys have figured it out, right?
Yeah.
Where that could be part of the discussion if those accessories are that muscle fucking stuff that we were talking about earlier, right? If you're trying to bend over a row 495 for sets of 5, and you're just, it's like a really shitty looking deadlift.
Yeah.
Right. That you're bent over doing. Then in that case, that volume would have to be added to that other type of volume because the stressor is just so high. But if it's done in a bodybuilding type context, it's a whole different type of block. But some people will hear that volume and then think that's that whole component, where you never do this, but say you finish with a set of 200 crunches. Right. So, that kind of plays into that as well. And I guess you could say steps could play into it. It's all how you want to kind of factor all that throughout that whole thing. And so with that volume, have you guys found that there's a threshold that you don't want to breach? Because if it's too much, then you're breaking the board.
Yeah. We haven't explicitly talked about that, but with our rep ranges, I guess the commonality is we never really go above 8 or 10 reps when it comes to like a squat, bench, or deadlift. Like Craig Foster the other day squatted, it's like 775 for a set of 8. I think it was something like that, something crazy. And a lot of the stuff we do is centered around it's like the off season, quote unquote off season training is a lot of stuff between 6 and 10 reps, and then once we get closer and closer to meet time, then it's more of like when we're at the starting gate, it's closer to like 4 to 5 reps, maybe 3 reps. And then as we get closer and closer to the meet, it kind of drops down and we reduce the volume, increase the load. And we get closer and closer to 1, maybe 2 by 1, 3 by 1. And then I think we finish off with like a 1 by 1. And that's pretty common between all of us, except for Fernando, who's somehow able to compete every 4 weeks and not implode. I still can't wrap my head around how often he competes. And it's like he basically selects all the meets that pay the most money, and he goes and he wins them all. And I'm like, please, sir, can I have some?
Mm-hmm.
I compete twice a year. I'd like a penny, please.
I just wait till he burns out, right? And
he's been in the sport. He hasn't been in the sport as long as us because he kind of focuses. He was focused more on strongman stuff, and he and Shane are very in tuned with like everything that's going on with World's Strongest Man and stuff, and then Justin Zottel will chime in with the facts about the Canadian competitors. But I guess we all have a vested interest in not just powerlifting fandom. It's kind of hard to be a fan of powerlifting when you are I struggle to be a fan of someone else in powerlifting because they're my direct competitor. So I prefer the female powerlifters, not just because they're more easy to look on the eyes, but because I'm not competitive with them and I can actually follow their stuff a little bit better. and not get competitive with it. Like,
what would be the commonalities that you're seeing with mindset
between all of us?
Mm-hmm.
Stubbornness. And stubbornness.
How so? In what context?
We all make a plan and we stick to it. So like, Shane Haller had like 2 years worth of program. He started coaching himself and he had like 2 years worth of programming written down in an Excel spreadsheet. And he showed it to me at one point. I was like, that is a very long plan. I'm like, I barely even know what I'm going to have for my free meal this weekend. And you've got 2 years worth of programming out there. And it's like, he made that program and he might tweak something here and there, but it's like, he's basically on it. And that's how he got his, was it 24 something total at the Ghost Clash, something crazy. And like, he has that plan. Craig's stubborn and he'll be like, all right, I've got like a 4x2, but like 1x8 is good enough. So like, let me just do a set of 8 at like 800. Or there's one time when he was prepping for the Ghost Clash 1, he did 800 for 10 in wraps. And he was like, I just really hate wearing wraps. So I just didn't want to wrap as often. So I just, instead of doing a 2x8 or a 2x4, I did a 1x8, or a 2x5, I did a 1x10. And then Justin Zottel, he's like, I'm the smallest one in here. I got this lowest total. I'd be damned if I'm going to allow this to last. I'm going to beat all of you guys. So he and I are going head to head at the American Pro 3. And Justin, at the Ghost Clash, he did bomb out, but he cut down to 275, and he was going for the all-time world record that Phil Herndon had. And I think it was sleeves. But for the American Pro 3, he said that he's going to bulk up and be bigger than me just so that he can say that I'm smaller than him. And we're going head to head on the platform. That's going to be super cool to see. And then Fernando's just, he's like, they've got Sir Dave in the ABS. Why is everyone sleeping on me? I'm like back-to-back champion. I'm going to prove them all wrong. Like, we're all super stubborn and we've got these like visions of grandeur, and somehow, though we are super competitive with each other, we don't let it get in the way of our constructive, criticism, but like support of each other. So it's like, it's a really good community. And I'm lucky to have met all these guys, because New Hampshire isn't the biggest powerlifting state in the world. The number 2 total is about a 2,000 total in my state. So I struggle to find like-minded autistic meatheads to gather around and talk about powerlifting and what it's like and share experiences. But I'm lucky to, it's like social media sucks, but there's that one shining star of the people you meet through it. That kind of makes it not suck as much.
All right, guys, I'm here at elitefts. I'm at the compound. Nobody is watching right now, so bear with me. I found some bands that I need really, really bad. I'm going to throw them in my bag and take them home with me, so don't tell anybody. Bands are absolutely great. If you're looking for the safest way to train to become fast, to become explosive, become strong, safety. Watch some videos about using bands. Why should you buy the Elite FTS bands? I swear. Promise you guys, these bands will last longer than any other bands you will buy anywhere. They're a little more expensive. They're going to last a heck of a lot longer. EliteFTS.com. Get your bands just like I am. See ya.
Summer's here and so is the heat. I've spent most of my life training in unconditioned gyms, and I know most of you that are training in garage gyms, private gyms, black iron gyms, know what I'm talking about when I say the heat sucks. It kills your motivation to go to the gym. It kills your performance, but it doesn't have to if you keep your electrolytes up. That's why today's episode is sponsored by Element. Element is a tasty electrolyte drink with everything you need and nothing you don't. This means lots of salt with none of the junk. No sugar, no colors, no artificial ingredients, no gluten, no fillers, no BS. It contains an electrolyte ratio of 1,000 milligrams of sodium, 200 milligrams of potassium, and 60 milligrams of magnesium. Element can help prevent and eliminate headaches, muscle cramps, fatigue, brain fog, sleeplessness, and other common symptoms associated with electrolyte deficiency. Right now, Element is offering a free sample pack with any drink mix purchase. Get yours at drinkelement.com. This deal is only available through the Table Talk link. All right, guys, you like the content that we put out through Elite FTS? If it's the podcast, extra content, it's 20 years of being on YouTube, so there's a lot of different content there. We set up a membership YouTube channel, and with the membership YouTube channel, what you'll get is early release on all the podcasts, so you'll get access to it before everybody else. Those will also all be ad-free, so you won't have any interruptions and can listen straight through. And we'll have exclusive content, such as AMAs, to where we'll take all your questions and then answer them for you guys. So take a moment, join the channel. Is that what it is? Join the channel, join the YouTube. Just hit the join button and help support the podcast, and we'll help you. Okay, so I'm going to take that same question that I asked about the commonalities amongst the guys that you have the podcast with, the top lifters, and then ask you, what do you find are the commonalities amongst the younger lifters that you'd be working with?
The younger lifters always want to lift heavier than they should. They're always like, why do we have to be so light right now? I want to lift heavier. I want to hit a PR. Can I max out today? And I'm like, no. We've got all these variables. We've got fatigue. I don't want to call it a fatigue ratio, but like, we've got accumulated fatigue. We're kind of driving that through this to kind of build you up and have your body in a position of adaptability. And so throwing a max out, you're not going to do as good as you think you're going to do, because you've got all this fatigue, and it's also going to have to, it's throwing a monkey wrench into the rest of things. So it's like, you can't lift as heavy as you have to be. And it's one of those younger lifter things that I only recently overcame myself, realizing that the only time that you have to be strong is on the platform.
Well, the reason I put that out is everybody will agree with that. But the interesting thing is that everybody that will agree with that did the same thing that they're doing. Right. Yep. So then it becomes kind of like the art of programming, where, what's a different example I could give? If it's a strength and conditioning coach that's just working with an athlete in the gym for whatever that sport is, they may or may not think that the bench press is a good exercise for that sport. Whatever, we'll leave that off the page. It's debatable, right? But the fact of the matter, if it's a high school kid, they're probably, actually the deadlift is more popular than the bench now. So I'll use the deadlift as an example. So it may not be part of what their strength and conditioning program is, but I can pretty much guarantee they're going to pull a max deadlift in their buddy's basement or garage at some point in time. Where, to bring it back to the lifters that we're talking about, they're, even if you tell them not to do it and it's not in their program, they're probably still likely going to do it. So as somebody that's got to manage the art of that program design, do you stick shit in there like that just for them to be able to, because you know it's going to happen anyhow. But if you throw it in knowing it's not optimal, you can at least have some control over if it's going to happen or not going to happen? Or do you just hope the hell that they don't do it?
Maxing out is kind of like getting laid, where it's phenomenal every time. So I try to find different ways to simulate that without actually having them max out. So like an AMRAP is a good tool for that. You're still going to failure, but you're sitting new rep PRs and like having structured almost like intra block peaks towards a PR, like what my coach did with me with the 8 rep PRs on squats, getting me to a 605. And like, I was like, I never thought I could do that. That's phenomenal. That's awesome. And recognizing the more often you PR in more different ways, the better. But a younger lifter is not really gonna be able to do that. So I try to like keep that open line communication with my clients. Like I have a client who next week they're having a deadlift party at his gym, And he was like, can I max out? And I was like, I'm going to change your program so that you can. Just know that everything after that's going to not be as fun. It's almost like we have that power gauge of fun. And it's like the newer lifters want to be as fun as possible, as often as possible. And the older lifters just recognize missionary position still gets the job done, if not better.
How do you balance, how did you balance deep dive learning into the programming on this side and then your programming on this side, right? Because you can go down these rabbit holes and discover all this stuff, which you're going to want to implement, almost immediately. But sometimes you can, sometimes you can't. It takes a while to figure that all out. So what are some examples of mistakes that you've made in that context of doing that, if you can remember any of those? Does anything come to mind where you're on a set program, but then you're doing a deep dive in something and you see it, you're like, oh, I need to implement that, and then everything just kind of went to shit for a couple weeks?
The way I program is probably a little lazy. I'll program in 6-week blocks. So not blocks, but like 6 weeks at a time. So like I'll do the research and I'll be like, I'll be really excited, be like, maybe I'll do that next block. But it kind of like goes into my own back burner of tools that I can use for future blocks so that I don't deviate and I don't get that dopamine rush of, I've got this new thing. I got to see if it works. I got to see how it works. And one of the most recent things is slow eccentric squat, or like slow eccentric anythings, building up the neurological capacity. That's not something that a lot of lifters are going to need unless they're at the top level, or if they're reaching a plateau to kind of increase the amount of time under tension that they're able to do. So like a lot of newer lifters, they don't need that.
Well, my point of asking the question is they don't need it, right? And it can be detrimental, but they'll see it, right? Say they're already on a plan, say it's a plan that you have them doing, then they see that, then they want to implement that because 3 of the top lifters that they know just implemented that into their training. So they need to put that into their training because that's what's trending and the newest type of thing. And it goes in there where, what you just said is the best answer. You write it down, store it, implement it in that next block. But that's not the reality of what a lot of the younger lifters are going to do. They're going to see that, or if it's a pause deadlift or whatever it's going to be in that week. So with your athletes, that would fall back to the kind of maxing out. Like, how do you navigate that aspect as well? And because you already answered the question, just, file it away and see how it would implement into the next block, because it can have other consideration. Like if that's going to come in, something else may have to come out. Right. So if you were to make a YouTube video describing what I just said, how would you go about explaining that?
Well,
new trendy shit that can have impact neural or muscular, on the training that may exceed more than what you think it's going to, being thrown into the current program that you're doing.
I'd have to do a lot of research on the specific thing, and I'd probably have to prepare a bunch of your mom jokes for the intro. I'd probably take the idea and break it down as to, when do you need to do this? Why is it popular right now? What is this lifter specifically doing it for? Like pause deadlifts were, what was it? It was really popular about a year ago, I think, back when Andrew House was bleeding all over the bar, and you saw all those pictures, and Instagram was filtering those pictures out. But he was doing a lot of pause deadlifts, and the question was why? Well, it increases your ability to get into the starting position, and he was bulking up. He was getting bigger than he was because he had been competing at like 242, 275 for a long time. Now he's 308. And as you increase weight, you've got to increase your ability to get down to the bar. Otherwise, your deadlift is going to go to shit. So looking at that aspect, what are the variables that this specific lifter is trying to mitigate when you want to implement this trendy new thing? Is it applicable to you? Probably not. Are you increasing weight? Yeah. Then you might want to implement that. But if you're not, if your deadlift isn't you're not having trouble getting into the deadlift position, then you don't need that. I use pause deadlifts for my sumo pullers because a lot of them just do subventional, and pausing deadlifts makes them have to sumo it instead of just doing conventional. But
What do you mean?
like, have you seen a lot of lifters? They get into the sumo and then they just do all the conventional cues.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Elaborate.
Where it's like they straighten their legs out and then they try to drive into the bar and they're trying to like use their lower back to lift the bar and straighten up, rather instead of setting their wedge and getting their chest as high as possible before they even break the bar off the ground. They're almost like trying to slam into the deadlift. I feel like Kyler Williams to blame for that, but he did it differently and everyone's been trying to imitate that ever since. But subventional, where it's just sumo with conventional cues.
Mm-hmm.
But pause deadlift, you're not going to stay in that bottom position for a long time when you're doing subventional. So you've got to find a way to get into that position. If you're going to hold it for a second or two the moment it comes off the floor, and they slowly adjust into regular sumo, and then they get better, more adapted to lifting heavier weights because more plates on the bar, the more whip you've gotten the bar. And doing the pause deadlifts gets them into that, used to getting into that position with heavier weights, though they have lighter weights, and then they end up deadlifting better because you've kind of you fixed them without telling them you fixed them.
Mm-hmm. What are some of the other? What's the trendy thing now? I don't pay that much attention.
Oh, I've got too many child locks on my phone that I don't know either. I open my phone and I see some chick dancing in whatever the newest anime trend is, and I'm like, follow. What was I here for?
Mm-hmm. So you're not seeing, and it's not bubbling up through clients that you're working with, because normally that's where I would see it from with other coaches is. There's if something's trending, it's not just one of their clients.
Yeah.
It's like 5 of them. They're like, hey, I want to do this because so-and-so does this or whatever it's going to be. And, but what you just said about the pause deadlift, say Andrew House, and when he was doing that, when we were talking earlier about social media and context of those, that would have been good context to be in that caption to when that was posted. I don't know if it's going to have less people wanting to try to do it.
Yeah.
Right. Because then they're just going to equate that their problem is the same as what his is, even though it's probably not.
Yeah.
But they'll act like it is because that's what people do.
I'm strong like Andrew House.
Yes.
I have to do the same thing.
Yeah. The because it's been a decade since your first meet. So yeah. So how is, because technology hasn't changed that much, over the past decade, but the number of people using it has, so how has that influenced your own training? Right? Because I can have a lot of people on here that are social media, bitching about social media, but there's also a lot of people that have always had the social media.
Yeah.
Right. So you've kind of always had, that social media, just wasn't as many people kind of posting on that, so you can't make that argument, right? Because it's always been there and it's been a tool that you've been able to use to help you get, to where you are, because you can build relationships with people that you otherwise wouldn't be able to, especially in a state the size of a city, right? Yeah. And so what are some of the other aspects from basically just social media in general that has helped you to become a better lifter?
I've leveraged one of the worst pieces of social media, which is the keyboard judges. If you make a lift that is so undeniably clean, they've got nothing to say about it. So making sure that it's not just your own accountability, but you've got people who don't want you to succeed following you just to see you fail. They're going to keep you accountable too, because the moment you fuck up, they'll be the loudest one in the room, and they'll get all of their friends to surround you and be like, kick you when you down. And social media sucks because they can do that, but you can also approach it differently because you can have your 5-finger rule of you've only got 5 people in your life whose opinion you really care about. But you can also, when someone says something negative about you, it's still going to stick out. But and having those keyboard judges comment on your list, like that squat was high, that you got a quick press command on your bench, which is a weird one I've gotten, or your deadlift wasn't locked out, you're ramping your deadlifts. It's like they'll find the smallest mistake you make and they'll really twist the knife in that mistake. And if you've got thick enough skin, instead of just being like responding to them verbally or typingly or whatever the phrase is now, just respond with actions, because actions speak louder than words, and cleaning everything up. Like that was one of the things that I did at the American Pro. I got my opener squat on my third because I missed it twice due to depth, and it looked like an opener, but I didn't have a big following. I didn't have a lot of accountability. I didn't have a lot of eyes on the product I was putting out, which was my own squat, and I was getting away with a lot of things. I've squatted 800 for 6 before. Yeah, but was it good reps? Was it quality? Did I take my time? Did I hit depth? Or was I just doing it for the sake of getting a pat on the back from the people who are going to say yes to everything you say anyway? So technology, most of it sucks because it's just taking advantage of your lack of dopamine and your closed off nature. But you can also use it for some pretty good things, like spreading information, like you do, and using it for your own uses. Like, that there's negativity going to be out there. Use that to your advantage to keep yourself accountable, because I've been playing with this idea in my head that everyone's like, why is my favorite lifter stronger than I am? And I'm like, because they take more videos of their shit and they want to make sure that their shit is better quality, because they know they've got the keyboard warriors out there that's going to be commenting on everything they do. So they make it as clean as possible, and they're not cheating their reps. So it's cleaner, and indirectly they're better for it.
Mm-hmm. Do you film all your lifts?
I film all my working sets with like squat, bench, and deadlift, and then I do one set of the rest of the lifts, just for the sake of putting it on YouTube and be like, hey, here's what I did in a day. But also, nobody wants to watch me do a 3x20 by 20 superset of cable flies and push-ups.
No, but you can use it for your own analysis.
Yeah.
So take that all aside. Yeah. There's value in that, because you're going to be your worst critic.
Yeah.
By far.
Yeah.
And then, if you're filing it in somewhat of a logical way, you'll be able to see how that squat looks 6 weeks out compared to the last 6 weeks out, and so forth, or for your coach, or to be able to see, and a lot of other reasons with that. Yeah. The one thing that I've mentioned many times is that gets lost a lot of times with the lifts that are posted on Instagram is you're not really seeing everything. You're not seeing the setup. You're not seeing the approach.
Yeah.
If they walk out, you're usually not even seeing the walkout either. You're just seeing the meat and potatoes.
Yeah.
Which is the highlight reel, of all the other stuff that kind of happens in training. With, to dial back into the rest periods, because you mentioned that changed a little bit. Did that change on the main list too?
Mm-hmm.
And to what degree?
So on the main lifts, I'll generally have somewhere between 2 and 4 minutes of rest time between the main lifts. Recently, I haven't had the rest time on squats or bench because they're more CNS taxing and fatiguing, and Joe wants me to be more recovered, but then I implement my own. I'm like, I'm not going past 4 because I don't want to be fat and lazy, and I've got my own rules, like no sitting in the gym and stuff like that. But he'll have a lot of rest time things, and I've almost developed like a rule of thumb based on watching the patterns that he's implemented into my stuff, where it's like all accessories are 90 seconds or 60 seconds, and depending on what the stimulus is supposed to be, like the first time that I was supposed to do 525 for a 3x8, it was supposed to be like 90 seconds rest, and I didn't really notice what it did in my training at first, but once I got to a meet, I was like, when I got to deadlifts, I was like, I just want to take a nap. Let me take my opener. I know I'm going to drop my next two. I just want to get out of here. And then I was like, oh, I can actually participate and get more than just my obligatory participation trophy for coming to this meet and having no competition. And it really impacts. It's like an accumulated amount of impact when it comes to the day, because it's increasing athletic potential, which you generally never put powerlifter and athlete in the same sentence, but it's looking more and more like we have to be like professional athletes in order to perform like professional athletes, which everyone wants to be.
Mm-hmm.
So somewhere for the squat, bench, and deadlift, somewhere between 2 and 4 minutes, and deadlift is the strictest one. Sometimes he'll like, I guess a trend right now is cluster deadlifts, where you'll get like 15 by 1, and you basically deadlift, you take a step back, and you're like, I'm good, and then you go again. Mm-hmm. He'll sometimes do cluster deadlifts, and sometimes he'll do 60-second rest time deadlifts. And I've got really bad eyesight. If I take my glasses off, I won't be able to see her face. So I struggle to read the clock in the room, and I'm like, what is 60 seconds? So I just say fuck it, and I put it down, I take a sip of water, I chalk my hands, and I go back in. So it's almost like a cluster, because a minute is a lot less time than you think it is. Everyone's like, oh, I take like 5 minutes of rest, but it's actually 15. Mm-hmm. And I'd say it cut down on my my gym time, or like the time that I've been in the gym. But it's just like the assault bike sprints and increasing cardio increased the amount of work capacity that I'm able to do. And it really, it's pushed that so that I can do more in the gym. And what is it? Death Grip Derek said that there's 3 ways to get stronger. There's increasing the weight on the bar, increasing the number of reps of the same weight. And then the hidden variable is doing it with less rest time. And kind of leaning into that, if you do like a 2x3, and normally you're taking 15 minutes rest, you do it at 5 minutes, you're not ready. And then you get used to it, and you're like, well, I feel like I'm just sitting around all the time. I am ready. You drop it down to 3 minutes, and then the cycle continues. And then you're like, why am I even doing this weight anymore? I'm taking 60 seconds rest. And you secretly got stronger on accident.
Mm-hmm. Were there any topics you want to discuss I didn't bring up? Wait, I got your topic list here. There's like cats and dogs and penguins. So we talked about penguins. Don't think we got into the cats and the dogs. Old school versus new school methodologies. We kind of touched on that a little bit, but if you were to like tie that up and wrap it up into, how would you define old school and new school?
The biggest difference between the old school and the new school is the athleticism. Like the old school gym generally has one treadmill that's collecting dust, but the new school gym has everyone using the treadmills are being constantly used. It almost looks like heavy bodybuilding, where you're eating like a bodybuilder, but you're lifting like a power lifter, but your accessories are also like a bodybuilder too. So it's almost like a very slight divergence in the pathway between those. And the biggest difference in the programming when it comes to the old school and the new school, they both have a lot of emphasis on the rep and set schemes developed by Prolepin. There's the adjustment, probably up or down. The old school is more faithful to that Prolepin's chart, where the new school kind of divulges a little bit. But the biggest difference is the timed rest periods, and we're kind of diving more and more into the athletic ability of the lifter and increasing the recoverability, because the old saying is, if you've got 2 equal lifters doing the same program, the one who does the most to recover is the one that's going to win. So the one with the better nutrition, better sleep, and now it's the best cardio potential is going to be the one that's going to end up winning.
All those to a degree.
Yeah.
Right. Because it can be taken too far.
Yeah.
In all of those aspects. I don't think that's really a problem.
Yeah.
In strength sports, I don't think they're going to take their cardio too far. Right. Now, I do think they can take the recovery too far, to where it ends up they're training once a week.
Yeah.
And I'm interested to see if you've seen the same thing where I'll find lifters that kind of accidentally stumble into a peaking phase without knowing that they did it. Albeit holidays or whatever it's going to be, they can't get in the same amount of training volume that they normally would. And then boom, they have this amazing workout. So then they start to think, I don't need all that other shit. So then they pull all that other stuff out and they end up being that person that just does the main lift, working up to one heavy set. But then that's all they do. Right. Which is essentially how you would peak, for me. And then months later, everything starts to fall apart and they can't figure out why, where it's funny for me to see because, as I said, they accidentally stumbled across the peaking block without knowing that's what. Have you seen lifters fall into that?
Almost. I've seen lifters where they'll do the main movement and then they're like, I'll come back later in the week and I'll do my accessories. And then they'll kind of like do their main lifts and then they'll have an accessory day where they do all of their accessories for all the 3 movements.
And then skip the accessory day. And then and then the next week is really good.
Yeah. They get brunch, they get mimosas, and they I forgot I was supposed to have accessories today. Oops.
Yeah. Getting back to other topics, I guess I'll ask you in a different way. What are on your list of topics to create for your YouTube channel?
I've been struggling with that one pretty heavy-handedly because the whole goal of my YouTube channel was to be the channel that I wish that I had access to when I first started lifting. And I forgot what I struggled with when I first started lifting because it's been a decade. And the next, like, I guess, series of videos that I have planned of that educational variety, because the vlogging videos, I just point a camera at myself throughout the day and I'm like, hey, this is what I'm eating. And here's how I feel about things. Let me give you guys way too much information about my personal life. But the educational things where I imply that I fuck everyone's mom, the next couple ones is like breaking down the different programs that are out there, because there are a million different kinds of programs and all of them work. The problem is figuring out which ones work the best for which person. And then you get the whole stand efforting. The best diet is the one that you can stick to. The best program is the one that you can have the best results with, stick to the best. But then you get into program hopping where everyone's trying every program. They make no progress for like 3 years and they're like, I give up. I'm doing CrossFit.
That's the biggest thing.
But my next series, the next one that I have planned is breaking down 531, which I tried to do and then I got really off track and I ended up doing something like what are the words in powerlifting that a lot of people don't really know, like linear periodization, deload, training max, the G spot, the things that people should know about, but don't. No one explained them to me and I had to look them up and experience them on my own. So doing a whole series. So, I basically already did all the prerequisite research for a lot of those videos because I've been writing. I have an ebook that's just got 1 chapter left before I publish it, and it's almost like an anthological approach to powerlifting program where it goes over like block periodization, Prilepin's chart, and then it looks at how the Smolov squat cycle is stupid, and then it goes into more modernized programming where it's like it goes into 531, cube method, juggernaut, 5th set. It touches on West Side for the sake of mentioning accommodating resistance. And then it's like, what would it look like if you kind of meshed all these together in an intelligent manner? And then there's like a conclusion chapter about like that whole like modernized thing, like what are we looking at? And it goes into like heartbeat manipulation, the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous systems, and manipulating that in order to make sure that you are more or less recovered on certain days. So the next series of videos is going to be like beginner programs, intermediate programs, and then I'm like, I have nothing left. I'm like,
how would you define beginner versus intermediate?
Beginner is still getting those beginner gains, and they haven't plateaued yet. So like I said earlier, fifth set 531 would probably be the best program for that, because it's going to stop working at a certain point, and it's going to be very obvious to the lifter when it's no longer working.
And then how do you know that intermediate goes into advanced?
It's a gray area. You need to think more on that, because it's almost like the whole old school versus new school, where intermediate is all those it's very simple, but it's not basic enough for the newbie lifter. And the advanced lifter has got more variables to it. So it's like it's got those rest period manipulations and undulated deloads and stuff like that. So like for example, like Dawson Wyndham just posted his ghost training program, and everyone's got their training program. Shane Haller's got his training program. I think Dan Bell has a training program. Julius Maddox has his training program. So it's like, is the advanced lifter training program the ones that these guys are putting out, these brand new top, or not brand new, but these top lifters, or is it the generalized intermediate? Is the intermediate and no longer beginner lifter going to benefit more from doing those, like the fifth set and the cube and juggernaut and stuff like that? It's like it's going to take a little bit more thought and thinking about and processing what the intermediate lifter needs specifically to be able to determine, are they advanced or intermediate, before deciding which program is best for them.
I would say that, to go from intermediate to advanced, assuming the genetics are there, right? Because that matters. And it's not really programming wise, but some of the variables that I've noticed would be the ability to be realistic with themselves, right? The ability to understand the strength and the reason for long-term programming being anything more than 4 months. The ability to know how to auto-regulate every single aspect of their training. Do you need to take 135 for the bench 3 times, or do you need to, or do you need to trim the warm-ups because the top sets are going to take more out of there? There's a lot of, when you go in the gym to train, even when you were training yesterday, there's a lot of decisions that you're making that you don't even know that you're making.
Yeah. Because
that you're advanced, right? And that comes through that experience and all the other stuff, and knowing the difference from that. And then the fourth variable would be, to be able to take criticism, without being butthurt about it, and be able to look at the criticism as things that could be able to help. And then lastly, the ability to ask, for input, on what could, help or not help, and then be able to decipher with that input. And this is more psychological, being able to decipher that input. And if you don't think it's going to work well for you, not let the person that's giving you the input think that you're being an asshole about it. Right. Because that happens too. I'm sure it happens to you all. People are going to give you suggestions all the time. Right. And you appreciate them all. And they shouldn't be butthurt when you say, I'm good, but thank you. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. But because those are the things that when I'm looking at and interviewing all the top lifters, the training's different, the nutrition's, everything, it's all different. But the things that are those commonalities across all of it is that, and they realize that this is more than just working out. What happens in the gym, it doesn't end there.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, and all those things happen through like a little, like almost like a life cycle. Right, because what took you to get you there is the opposite of what you need to do now. Like training like an idiot until you're puking all the time, training 4 hours a day on a double split routine. Yeah. All those type of things you're making progress at the time. And there's a real weird intermediate phase where you start trimming things down, but you think that you're being a puss about the whole thing. And that's why you're not making gains, because now you're not really training hard.
Yep.
Whereas before you were training harder than what you're training now. And everything turns on upside down. And then once you realize that it's not really turned upside down, it's actually turned right side up. That's when that kind of happens. Now, how you can put that into a program or a book, I don't think you can.
Yeah.
Right. Because there's too many variables. And then the intermediate can also become so overwhelmed with all these variables that they may not need to even worry about at the time.
Yeah.
Like in nutrition, people are going to hate me for this one, but nutrition may be one that might be best implemented as they're later down the path. Right. If they're making gains eating whatever they're eating, then I almost kind of see that like as PEDs. Like they can just stay clean for as long as they can, but then when that time comes, they can flip that card and use that. But to get to that advanced phase, you're going to have a full deck of cards of pretty much everything, and know how to use them. So it's a weird thing to watch, kind of plotting where people are. But in the strength sports, most of them never make it past the majority. Probably never make it past the beginner. There's probably more people that enter one meet and never compete again.
They're all coaching now.
That's a good point. It's a good point. But you can randomly I do shit like this sometimes, just go through open powerlifting and just randomly just start clicking on names that are on the lower bottom. And it's just like one meet. That's the majority of the people. Where is somebody that loves the sport. Part of what I ask myself is, well, how can we get these people to do two? Right? Because we'd have way more lifters if they competed more than one time. If they get two, maybe three, now you might have somebody that's going to last for a decade. And then, realistically, that's probably what it's going to take for them to be hitting the biggest numbers. And nobody wants to hear that. Right? Nor did I, nor did you. The lifters today are no different than what we were. If you could have given me a program that was going to take my bench from 200 to 500 in 12 weeks, I'm not going to be I wasn't going to be the person. No, I'm not going to do that.
Yeah.
You're out of your fucking mind. Like everybody's going to do that. But there's more voices today, I think, with more realistic advice and education to be able to put out, to be able to help those people. What's the best way for people to follow you?
I'm on Instagram, Full Primal Power, and YouTube.
And OnlyFans. I'm just going to leave it at that. Like they can go look at your link tree, right? And we'll just leave it at that, right? And that's probably how you're making the majority of your revenue, right?
That's my most clicked link too.
Oh, is it really? By a lot?
200%.
All right. So everybody should go to your Instagram, click on the link tree and then create their own OnlyFans. And they'll have, I don't want to say more. Yeah, because the profile clicks are engagement, right?
Yeah.
So they'd have more engagement, right? So any final thoughts?
You're implying I have thoughts at all.
Well, there are some. I mean, we just talked for a few hours, so there's some thoughts buzzing around in your head.
Yeah.
So that's it. Yeah. The final thoughts are, yeah.
I don't know. It's like I don't know what to do with my hands.
Mm-hmm.
Like Ricky Bobby here. I don't know.
I'll just keep the awkward silence till we think of something.
Do I shout out my sponsors right now?
Yeah.
Shout out to Move Weight, based out of Salem, New Hampshire. They're the company that produces my wrist wraps. Benched 600 pounds multiple times in those bad boys. And they have gotten me a new singlet. So I finally earned myself a new singlet that is clean.
Clean? 100-pound carryover singlet?
Maybe, I don't know. I've been using the same singlet since 2016. Never washed it.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, you don't want to wash the gains out. And also, it reveals all of my nipples when I'm deadlifting. The old one.
The old one.
The new one, they'd have to click the OnlyFans to see.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So we'll just leave it at that. I want to thank you for coming out. It's been great.
Thanks for having me, Dave.
And we're done. All right, guys. Thanks for watching the video to the end. Make sure to like and subscribe to the channel and click here, 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 or here for more videos.